You're good? Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Moffitt, and I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting, the August 30th, 2024 meeting of the Asheville Downtown Commission. The Asheville Downtown Commission was created by the City Council for the sustainability and continued development of downtown, a vital urban center of Western North Carolina's economic, cultural, and visitor activity. The Downtown Commission provides City Council with recommendations on downtown policies and initiatives. In addition, Downtown Commissioners currently fill 3 out of the 9 seats of the city's Design Review Committee, which reviews development projects within the Central Business District, the River Arts District, and hotel projects outside of those areas. The Downtown Commission also has the opportunity to provide input on projects outside of the scope of design review. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. And I think we're still also available on YouTube. Is that correct? Yeah. For anyone out there with us today, welcome. This time I'll go through and introduce our committee members. As I say your name, say a quick hello. Jefferson.
Good morning.
Megan.
Morning.
Ricardo.
Good morning.
Robin.
Hello.
Billy.
Hello.
Hayden. Noor.
Hello.
Stu.
Good morning.
And our council liaison, Sage.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. So we have a few things to kind of get through today. We'll do our approval of minutes first. So you've had a chance, I hope, to review the draft minutes. Do we have any revisions or recommendations, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Our agenda today includes new business regarding, we're having a discussion on the hotel overlay. We have a dashboard and development data to review. We are having a discussion on downtown housing, discussing our overview of the current efforts and proposed policies. We're having a discussion regarding a development impact review for a proposed small hotel conversion at the Grove Arcade. And then we're going to speak or discuss the current status of the implementation of the bid. So I will try my best to keep us moving so that we can get out of here before lunch. At this time, we will review any public comment. To the best of my knowledge, we did not receive any ahead of time.
That's correct.
And I don't is there anyone online that would like to make public comment?
We don't take
don't-
public comments
okay, we
online
don't-
live,
that's right,
but if
never
there's
mind.
anyone in the public.
Do we have any public comment at this time? All right, I'll close for public comment, and we will move into new business and presentations. Our first item, again, is an update on the hotel overlay.
I don't see Clay. I know Clay's here, but he's not here.
He's not here. Let's let's move that one until after the downtown housing discussion. It was going to be a really good segue. Oh. Do you want to get up? We can flip flop.
Morning.
We can flip flop.
I'm on vacation next week. And it's well deserved.
Well, let me introduce the topic and let you get your feet underneath you. My sincere apologies. So Clay has been working on a dashboard that I hope you had a chance to look at. That was sent out ahead of time. That kind of gives a bit of an understanding on, I think, on some of the public benefits that have been made, at least promised to date, the status of some of the hotels. So we've had the overlay district in place right at, what are we going on, 2 years? We at 2 years now? Yeah. So we're talking about, basically we're beginning the process of evaluating what kind of outcomes we're getting out of the hotel overlay district, and the dashboard is an important component to that.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the break. Yeah, so I just noticed it's actually 3 years, it looks like, that we're on this. So this was kind of one of those, you know, when we get our work, it comes in waves. The way the months are timed and everything, we have a lot of work. And I for whatever reason, spent a lot of time reviewing the hotel applications. I actually kind of like it. I think it's an interesting issue that the city is dealing with. And I saw a lot of the public requests, and so I asked Steph and Will and Chris if I could take a stab at trying to put together something like this to kind of, every time there's a public request, it takes a lot of time to get everything together and make sure everything's got it. And we just thought, let's just make this a public display. It also can become a resource for policymakers when we see everything together all the time. And so a lot of the questions and a lot of the public dialogue was also pretty confused about how this works. And so I spent a significant amount of trying to come up with language that would display for primarily public, not experts or professionals, about what that overlay is, the history and how it works, and then a significant number of links so that people could go and find out any information they want related to it. So that's kind of the context and the drive and the philosophy of what this is. And it's the first draft. It'll always probably be updated, and it will, and we recognize that. So if you have input on it, and like I said when we did the press thing, for now my email is on the website. If I get hundreds of them, I might, it might get a little different. But please let me know information that you think might be helpful. And so the first section was all about the background data and then what the dashboard actually is. This section talks, once you have that background data, you can understand, hopefully, what the difference is between these levels of review. This could probably use a little more text to explain to folks, because when you say level 1, 2, and conditional zoning, people don't know what that means. So we're going to probably expand this a little bit. This is the only part of this dashboard that's not live, because it's a pie chart, and I don't collect this data as a part of the work on the dashboard. The dashboard only displays data related to hotels that are taking advantage of the incentive to avoid the conditional zoning process. So you can see that very few are coming in as conditional zoning. And at least one of them is because there was a conflict in regulations that required them to go to conditional zoning because they were adhering to historic district requirements. And that could be one potential hotel overlay amendment that says, hey, if there are other superseding regulations that trump what's in the hotel overlay, you can still take advantage of this, and that might be a way to do that. But you would want to make those exceptions very narrow and directed so that nobody can really kind of play around with that. But that's why that one, at least, that's Kessler Hotel, was not a level 2. It was a conditional zoning. But it otherwise would have qualified for the hotel overlay. So the first challenge is, okay, what's out there? Where is everything? And I think a lot of folks thought, wow, there's all these hotels where, we know everything that's happening. It turns out only 2 hotels are technically even close to completed since the hotel overlay. And so that's what this list represents. Once we get through a technical review committee meeting, the hotel will appear on this spreadsheet. And so I have to add one here in the next few days, because we do have a new one that's come in, and it's going to technical review in about 2 weeks, actually. So here it is. So only Elevation Lofts has gone to completion. I think Moxie Hotel actually made it to completion this week. And so when I update the spreadsheet, it will actually carry through to this website. So that's the real kind of back-end cool stuff. We can update the spreadsheet, and then the web people don't have to touch anything. This is a program in Google called Looker, which is a data visualization program. And so if I update the spreadsheet within 8 hours, it's triggered to check that spreadsheet every 8 hours. It will appear on this dashboard. And the other thing about it being data visualization, we haven't really maximized this, but you can just click one resource and it'll just show you that. And so that's just kind of a goofy thing that we're experimenting with to see if we can make that even more helpful to people that want to look at this kind of stuff.
What about Embassy Suites?
Embassy Suites was not in the hotel overlay.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was before it.
Oh, gotcha.
2017, it was the big.
Yeah, it's been around. I
And it
think,
just got completed recently.
yeah, so that shows you how long the timing is.
It was what?
In court,
For several years.
Okay.
I believe that was one of the impetuses for the hotel overlay.
Very much so.
So then after you learn about all the hotels that are in the process or completed, then we go in and we start teasing out what this benefits table is all about. And so there are links to the ordinance, there's a links to the actual benefits table, and then that explains all of these. And so this is another data point which just talks about how many rooms per hotel and the total benefit, public benefit points that were required, which then in turn triggers the compliance level. So these 13 hotels represent 747 new rooms when they're completed. Then the next section is when I start to explain what all these benefit options are. And so the ones that are focused on now, and the ones that are 95% used, are the contributions to monetary funds to support the policies that the council felt were important as a part of this. And it's broken into 4 categories. So if you open the public benefits table, you'll see these 4 categories. And I'm not a huge fan of the the language, but it mirrors what's in the tables. And one point that we've already found out administering this ordinance is it says Affordable Housing Reparations Fund, and it's lumped together. That's the contribution target. And so in our administration, we've asked the applicants who are complying to say, how would you like to split your contribution to that component? And so I think we've had one that just said 50-50. And so 50% of their contribution is going to go to affordable housing, 50% is going to reparations fund. The other 3 are pretty targeted, but neighborhood improvement, contributions to support public outs, all of those pay a certain amount of dollars per guest room in order to achieve the points to comply with the public benefits table. So that brings it all together.
And you don't have anything for, am I skipping ahead if I talk about the groups? You didn't have anything right now listed for Group 1 benefits, correct?
Correct.
This is just Group 2 and 3.
Yeah, anything that had a monetary contribution. And so that would be the next phase of this dashboard, is getting out all the other, which are not entirely used very often, but we do have a couple that had negative points because they displaced a business or a residential unit, and so we'll show that out as well. There are 2 zero lines here, and that's because, so also administering the ordinance, we noticed that there's no process dictated in the ordinance itself. It doesn't say when you submit anything, and it doesn't say when you pay it. And so by operation of standard procedure, the payment in our minds has to come in as a part of a request for certificate of occupancy. That's when compliance is checked. We've developed an internal policy standard operating procedure that asks applicants to prove compliance during the technical review committee and say, you have to at least submit to us a compliance path. You may change that when you get to TCO as long as you reach the same number of points. And so that policy came into effect after a couple of these hotels, so we haven't got from Create 72 or the Tribute Hotel what their compliance path is. The others we've asked, and some of them we asked after the fact. We told them we were putting this work together and they supported us. And so here you see the monetary contributions per hotel. And again, you can do the thing where you pick one line and you can see that. And then down here you see the totals. So there are 4 columns. First one is Affordable Housing and Reparations Fund. Second column is for neighborhood improvement. Third is public art. And fourth is supporting minority and women business enterprises, which has $0 in it, which is unfortunate. So the total contribution to these 13 hotels, minus the 2 that haven't submitted, is a pledged amount of $2.7 million. So that's probably one of the best data points I can give you for how this hotel overlay is working. And then finally, how much have we collected? And so these are the options. I'm sorry, this is a full discussion of all of the different options. This would probably actually be above that last section. But for instance, none of these over here have been used. The urban-only options, outdoor plaza, outdoor public plaza, none of those have been picked. None of them have used employee-owned business. None of them have used some of the living wages, B Corp thing. None of them have used any sustainable design principles. So there's a lot of options that we supply that aren't getting selected. And I leave that for a healthy policy debate about this. But that's just the data. Next chart is just a comparison to show you, in like a stack form. Okay, when folks exercise contributions, what does that look like comparatively? And clearly, group 2 is the one that has the most impact, which is affordable housing and reparation funds. And you can see that it's dramatic.
And Clay, if I may, one of the problems we're having is that since they're grouped together, we're not sure which fund's getting how much.
That's right, and that was what I was pointing out. That
Yeah.
so because we don't have, I think even if they said, well, you pick, I don't think staff would want to do that. It's really up to the developer or the owner or the applicant to say how those funds get divided. So I think that's kind of one of the real kind of targeted amendments that probably should happen quickly. And then this last part is again very interesting for understanding the operation. So this is the comparison of funds that we've received versus total proposed. And the colored slices are both the Moxie and Elevation, which are the only two who have presented their funds to the city for their TCO or their certificate of occupancy. So
of that 2.7, it's proposed.
it's about 100,000 that we've received
Okay.
because everything's in construction or in planning or permitting. And you can see that in the gray is the proposed total, and then the red and the blue are the collected. So as hotels get completed, we're going to start seeing that pie chart, shift to a more colorful image.
Okay.
And that's it. It's cut down already on the number of public requests for information. So success. Do you have any questions or comments or?
So let me structure this a little bit. We want to have a policy discussion regarding the efficacy of the hotel overlays, specifically as it relates to downtown. I don't know that I'm prepared to do that today. I really wanted to make sure you understood what this had and what it didn't have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
By the way, this is great work.
It's super cool.
It is.
Yeah,
I love it. I think it's cool.
For the walks and us, it's like really great stuff, and it's going to help us, I think, as we lead into some of these discussions. And it's also going to, I think, set us up for talking about what's going on with affordable housing and some of the UDO updates, because I think it's important for us to see like how it is working and maybe how it's not working so much. So I kind of want y'all to absorb it a little bit. So in other words, I know we all have I have a ton of thoughts on like, why aren't group 1? What in the world? But that's not, I'm not going to talk about the things I want to talk about. Instead, if you have questions about the actual dashboard and what it's showing, and if there's other information, I think that's the kind of where we want to kind of push this right now. Does that make sense?
I have one suggestion for information. I'd love to see, as they complete and spend the money, another column for their tax revenue, property tax, annual. Because the kind of the goal here is to express what are the hotels doing as they move through this approval process and what kind of community benefits are they creating. And that's just one more way that they are creating new revenue. Might be helpful. I also would love to have more of a policy overlay question in the future, so let's definitely do that.
And is there so like when I'm judging this, like the one piece I would love to have, and I don't know how easy it is to get, is I'd like to know what the actual cost of construction for some of these things are, so I can see in proportion to what they're spending, what they're having to spend to get this. Especially things like if they're spending $700,000 on a X, I want to have the sustainability I'm sorry. But I don't, without that information, I don't know what I'm talking
I
about.
wonder if the only data we'll be able to get is what they put on their application as an estimate at the beginning of the project. You know, that's the only way we
I don't
collect
know
it.
that we can, I don't know that the city always has that data, like the actual cost of construction from a schedule of values.
Not an actual, right?
I believe part of the building permit process requires an
Yeah.
estimate.
It's just an estimate, yeah.
It's an estimate, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead
And
and
no
tell
one's
you,
on it,
It's
like,
going
I
up.
don't tell you the truth.
yeah. And sometimes it's just, you know, you're guessing, because you haven't even hired them yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I give an estimate, and it's not what the schedule of value shows at the end of the job.
Hey, Clay, can I ask you a question about compliance?
Yeah.
So I know we talked about this before, we did Dash and Big Bill. I also love this, thank you so much. We had talked about how that it seems really hard to track compliance, and also that the city's sort of version of punishment is to get you in compliance at some point eventually. So efficacy seems to be an issue there, but also, is there a way for us to track from the beginning of a request to build, or when they start this process, what they think they're going to do, and then track along the way as they start pursuing permits and getting closer to completion, if they're still on track to do what they thought they were going to do, and then so the public can see at the beginning of this, they said they wanted to do public art, and at the end they switched to this. Because I personally am really disheartened by the way the money seems to be split up against the groups. And so I'd be really interested to know, as people are building in our city, why they're choosing to do certain things. Like, I'd like to know if everyone wants to fund public art. I want to hear them say they think we need more public art, so we can have a robust discussion about, do we need more public art, or should we be supporting disenfranchised and women-owned businesses?
So it is easy to track from proposed to final, because we force them or ask them.
That's right.
Strongly suggest that the process will be much smoother if they give us, a public benefits table filled out. And then they also have to submit a payment at the end. And so we could easily have a column that says, here's what was proposed, here's the final. As to the narrative about why, that would be something that we could conceivably extract from them and say, hey, why did you choose this? It would kind of be optional, but I do remember doing some of this work, reading in the minutes a couple of hotels saying, yeah, we understand the reputation of Asheville as an arts community, and we want to support that. They even specifically referenced a couple of art installations within downtown, and they wanted to see more of that. I think one of them also contributed to neighborhood improvement because they were on the edge of downtown, and they wanted to make sure that some of the funds went toward that. So that would be possible, and I think it would be something going forward we could easily do.
Because I think it would also help us to have a policy discussion about if the overlay is being effective, if people are throwing money at something because it's the easiest, or if they're doing it because they actually care. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then if everyone is throwing all the money in one pot, should the overlay be more, and would it be more impactful if we did not allow that pot to be filled anymore because the city has decided there's enough money in this one sector and no money in the
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's also, I think, in a way, the public-facing information is good for the hotels because it shows that, we're in an ordinance that forces us to do it, but we have made a thoughtful selection of where we want this money to go. And so there would probably need to be another set and said, okay, well, what does the city do with the money?
Sure.
And that's probably way in the future as the funds build up, but I think you're onto something that's important about this.
Regarding that, there's a policy discussion that needs to happen at some point of if it goes into this fund, at what point does it actually go to doing something good for the community versus some of these items, if it's a woman-owned business or if it's a employee-owned business, it's working from day one.
Right.
And there's a difference in those things that, sitting money in a pot, and then we have to figure out what to do with it. And then so 4 years later, we're spending that money that escalated, and now, it's not the same.
Well, I think that's what the public is talking about, the overlay. I think the city and maybe this commission and the public define efficacy and impact differently. And so I think if we all have the same set of information, then we're tracking intentions and impact,
Okay, is there, this is good request. Are there other?
Yeah, so it seems like most of the hotels are opting for the monetary contributions and not doing any certifications or capital improvements.
Yes, and one of the things I thought of while you were discussing is I will copy the foundational spreadsheet and share it with you. Originally, we started with the idea, let's just make this spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's really complicated. Sure. But I think this commission can interpret it, and I can do some narrative. And I have there are a few that did some things, and all of those are noted. But on a points basis, they're infinitesimal. Sure. But you can at least see them and see who's talked about it.
Yeah.
For instance, adaptive reuse of a building is a 50-point, and that's not in here, but it's a compliance path. So I'll share that with you all so that you can actually see the raw data.
And there's nothing requiring that the points, like a certain amount of points, come from each group?
Yes.
Okay.
There is. It's a breakdown, and so
Sure.
I think the reason the monetary contributions are selected is because a significant amount of the points have to come from that group 2 fund. I think it's over 50%.
It is.
Off the top of my head.
And you
Gotcha.
have to get up to like a LEED Platinum 4, I think, to equal the same amount of points that you get for the affordable housing, which all the architects went, eek, because that's a heavy lift.
It's a tall order.
Yeah, platinum is not. So that's a sustainability certification for buildings.
But I mean, in within group 2, you have the option of making a contribution or actually putting affordable units within the project and building them. But obviously, it's easier to just contribute to the fund.
Yeah, so it turns out I actually did describe everything, even though I didn't list them. And so group 2 options, at least 50% of points have to come from group 2, and then the deduction section, and then the group 3 options, which gets broken down, again, between urban and not urban hotels, which is basically the central business district.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question on how the city is judging its own policy on this? No, genuinely curious. How does the city feel about, or how would they feel about a program designed to support 4 groups, but 2 of the groups are not really being supported? And what does that mean about this policy and how the groups and the points are?
So that's exactly the discussion that we want to have, but we couldn't have until we had the dashboard. So I think we are the ones that start to answer that question. I know how staff. Well, do you want to? I mean, you can obviously answer that question from staff. I don't know that you can, or you can answer it as a staff.
A staff. I think that the overlay should be tweaked a little bit if we want to champion those particular policies. I think as staff, we try to remain agnostic and wait for the city to tell us what the policies are and then help them implement it. And so obviously we're going to be watching this policy discussion as it plays out. And then when we get around to proposing amendments to the hotel overlay, I think it's a no-brainer that we would try and reflect the priorities that have been discussed amongst the council and the commission that advises.
So what I've heard from council is that they're very interested in what we think about how this is working.
We'd love your input. We'd love to do an
I'll
update.
just add something too. So part of the reason we wanted to talk about housing today too is to do more of the analysis on how this is working against goals related to producing more and more affordable housing. So it's very much related, and staff hasn't done all of that analysis yet, but that it's happening in the lens of housing, I know, in the work that we're just getting started with now.
It is. So this is a broader discussion, right? So there's a variety of policy aims that the housing overlay was intended to accomplish. It is clearly heavily weighted on just a few of those, which was that's not what I remember of the intent of our discussion at the time. We thought it was going to be spread out.
But if you displace housing units, you lose 20 points each. The easiest way to get those positive points is to put some money into
It is.
group 2. So I think the only way to get people to choose group 3 is to put a maximum on group 2. Like, or like you can't put more, like we say up to 50%, or at least 50%. Maybe you can't have more than a certain percentage also.
We need to have some policy discussions. So we've asked for a couple of different pieces of information. Are there any other questions regarding the dashboard
I
itself?
kind of have one more question.
Yes, sir.
So the city knows that how many hotel units are in downtown. Do they also keep tabs on how many housing units are downtown? I don't know that it needs to be built into the dashboard per se, but I'm interested in knowing what the ratio is between housing units and hotel units.
Yeah,
That's
I
probably
don't,
gonna
I
be
don't think we have that data readily available on any kind of sheet. It would require us to crunch data and pull information out. I put together for you, I think at your request, for later in the meeting, information about the number of units that have been approved and unbuilt in downtown. So
This body
it's an
did get-
interesting number.
This body got a presentation, it's been probably 4 or 5 years, about the status right then. And there were several projects in queue, and so we could do some, catching up with that. And it went all the way back to when hotels converted to housing decades ago.
Sure.
And it had a pretty good.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very good. So leading into the discussion as a segue, so I'm not sure which one of you is up first. I think Sasha, is it you? We're gonna have a discussion of current efforts regarding the housing bond, affordable housing plan, some targeted UDO updates for regarding housing, and then we'll talk about this specifically from a downtown context. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sasha Vertinsky. I don't know everybody here anymore. I used to. I'm the Affordable Housing Officer for the Community and Economic Development Department. What that means is that my division is over local funding for affordable housing. We also have a division over homeless strategy and a division over federal funding. So that's my expertise. So just really quickly, our agenda for today, I wanted to go over what happened with the 2016 bond and the projects that were funded, use some examples so you understand who's being served by these projects, look very briefly at the affordable housing plan, and look ahead to what we're thinking about for the 2024 bond. And thanks for having me. So really quickly, if you weren't here or didn't know, in 2016, voters approved a $25 million bond for affordable housing. And on the ballot this November is a $20 million bond for affordable housing. Bond funds are limited to what they can be spent on. They have to be spent on capital expenditures, so construction, pre-development expenses, most pre-development expenses, land or housing acquisition, down payment assistance is eligible expense, home repair of capital improvements, and infrastructure improvements. So we could use bond funds to build a sewer line to affordable housing.
But not for rental assistance, as an example.
Correct. Yeah, so it has to be capital, it's, yeah. Maybe you know this, but the city does not build or own housing units. And many people confuse us with the Housing Authority, but we're a very separate organization. We make investments in affordable homes. We work with partners, nonprofit and for-profit partners, to do those things, providing down payment assistance, funds for homeowner repairs. Right now, we're doing that through federal funding, CDBG funds, and purchasing land or existing homes for future affordable housing. So just as a very quick summary, the 2016 bonds supported the development of 776 homes. 408 of those have been completed, and 368 of those are underway or in the pipeline. And so here's a list of those projects. Green means those are completed and open. Blue is they're under construction. And then purple is they're in the pipeline. So, for example, Star Point Apartments, which is a mountain housing opportunities project, we're very close to our loan closing in the next month. Probably we'll be closing on that loan, and same with Laurelwood Apartments. We're closing in October for that project. tried to break these down by income so we can think about who's getting these units. So this is not perfect data. So we're not really estimating, but 30% we know for sure, 67 of these homes are at 30% and below. And just to be clear, that's super low income. It's called extreme low income. That's generally folks often are living in housing authority properties. And it's extremely hard for local government to subsidize that level of affordability without other layers of funding. So if you're trying to serve 30% and below AMI, area median income, I should have said, I don't know if everybody knows that nomenclature. We can't be the only partner in that project. It won't happen. It's not, we can't bring enough money, or we put all our money into one project and we'd be done. 60% of area median income, we're estimating 564 units. And I do want to say that a number of those units are going to voucher holders, and voucher holders are often at 30% or 40%. So we don't really know the exact number of the really extremely low income folks we've got, but they're in there. And then 143 at 80% AMI, and then 2 at 100% AMI. And that's a home ownership kind of level. We stick to, in affordable housing, 80% and below for rental, but we can go up to 100% for home ownership. So just a little bit more meat on the bones of this idea. So an example for Buncombe County, the annual salary for an elementary school teacher in 2024 is $48,880. So an affordable rent to that person is $1,222. Our fair market rent in Buncombe County right now for a 2-bedroom unit is $1,680. So that person would be considered at low or moderate income at 80%. If they had 1 or 2 people, they'd be considered low income if they have like 2 kids and still just that one salary or more kids. Child care provider, it's even bleaker. Their average salary in Buncombe County is $27,870. And so the gap just increases. So if they're considered low income with a household of 1 to 3 people, but if they've got 3 kids, they're extremely low income. So we just use that to try to put some reality behind that. And I have a fuller slide deck that I'm happy to share with you all on your folder if you want to see it. One of the examples of the project that was completed is Amaranth Apartments. This is out actually in far west Asheville, Candler actually, and it's a low-income housing tax credit project, and so it's able to reach these lower incomes because we've got those federal dollars from tax credits in there. On a bigger deck, we've got a really nice interview with somebody who lives there, and she talks about how wonderful this housing's been for her because there's a grocery store you can literally walk to, she's close to schools, and her doctor's in that same plaza, and it's made a huge difference for her. Overview, this is how, if we break up the spending of the bond, was spent over 50% on housing units, around a third of it for land, and some of that is kind of being land banked, 9% for infrastructure and 4% for pre-development. And I'm trying to be quick, so there's a lot I'm not saying, so feel free to ask questions when I'm done. We've been working on an affordable housing plan for the last year. We worked with Enterprise Advisors, which is a nonprofit, nationally known affordable housing experts. We really worked to center racial equity in our plan and did a lot of community listening and working with the community throughout this process. We were even at the mall, which was a lot of fun. So the main 3 goals of our affordable housing plan is promoting policies and resources to help existing residents stay in Asheville, preserving existing affordable housing and improving housing quality, and then increasing the supply of housing that meets the diverse needs of current and future residents. And kind of a through goal here, also other goals are aligning these with our place-based programs and related city initiatives, and then broadening and strengthening our affordable housing ecosystem, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Throughout all of these priorities, really trying to get to the lowest income we can and really getting to folks with the most need. Because, and there's lots of interesting data about who's in what units. And oftentimes when we don't, there's a couple things going on with that. You know, when we don't have the supply, people at higher incomes are taking the lower income units, and lower income people have to be in the higher income units, and there's kind of a mismatch there. And so people are spending either way more than they should be spending. And so really when you address the needs of the people with the greatest need, you actually free up housing for everybody. And then protecting against displacement. This is really a theme we've been talking about for years and is really kind of coming to the fore. Just want to give you a quick example of year one strategies. There's pages and pages of this, but so we have our strategies kind of prioritized by year one, short term, medium term, long term. These are just some of the things we're doing in year one. So we're continue to support construction of affordable for sale and rental housing. We're working with planning. We're collaborating a lot and working on getting that housing on transit corridors and where does it make the most sense to really get as much housing as we can. Enhancing our existing city tools and increasing awareness of other tools. So, the other things that are not on this slide, which I do want to talk about really quickly, is this ecosystem idea and strengthening how we're supporting affordable housing. So we've got a $20 million bond on the budget. In year one, if it passes, which hopefully it will, we will put money into the Housing Trust Fund pretty quickly because we have a funding cycle. It's proven in the last 2 or 3 years, proven really highly successful, and it's producing lots of units. But at the same time, there's other things we can't spend bond money on that we really need. We're talking with our nonprofit and community partners right now about a centralized wait list for folks looking for affordable housing. Home repair is a big priority for council and other groups, and home repair can be a capital expenditure, but loans don't work. They need to be grants to homeowners, so we're not overburdening them when they're smaller amounts. So that's another thing. There's also discussions about improving the homeowner tax program. I don't know if the tax grant program that the county runs, the city contributes money to that, and there's been discussion of should we up our amount of money that we're contributing to that. Again, that anti-displacement lens running throughout here. The other big thing we're working on this fall is data and trying to get all our ducks in a row. We've kind of, from the pandemic, we lost some staff, and through turnover, some things were not kept the way they should be. So data is a big part of it. So I was definitely noting down some of those questions earlier. I think those are helpful. And the Cease the Harm audit definitely emphasized data as a big missing piece of our program. And yes, so AHAC, Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, so I have a board similar to you all, and they meet usually the first Thursday. We're meeting on September 12th. They'll be discussing their work plan and also how they work very closely with our Housing and Community Development Council Committee. And so we're talking about how we're getting this plan kind of revved up and implemented over the next year with them, and then also HCD, and Councilwoman Turner is the chair of that committee. And then on September 24th, we are doing a work session with City Council. Steph Dahl and Nikki Reed, who's my boss, will be presenting to City Council, kind of about this collaboration between our two different departments in anti-displacement work. Hopefully in November, the bonds will pass, and then we'll immediately start getting to work on that bond allocations. So for the bond 2024 bond, we are thinking we're going to do an annual allocation and really kind of keep the community updated better than we did through 2016 of how that money is being spent and what it's going to. And that's it. I'm sorry I'm droning on. I feel like happy to answer any questions.
Hi. You sort of answered my question at the end there. I asked for some of this information in advance of the meeting. The reason for that is that there's very little information on the dashboard for the city's 2016 bonds in comparison to, say, like the Parks and Rec bond or the transportation bond, where it's very specific, what projects, how much money. You answered some of that with this presentation. I would hope that the dashboard could also be updated so that we can see the specifics of how much money went to Amaranth, maybe even what is the total cost of Amaranth and how, I don't know if that's fully affordable housing, but and then a breakdown that says, you know, the number of affordable units, especially in advance of asking taxpayers to sign on to an additional bond, which I think is important. But I was frustrated by the lack of information and understanding how many units are actually occupied for $22 million.
Right.
That information wasn't out there until today, as far as I know.
Yes, not in that way, not on the dashboard. And the way the dashboard was sent up, it actually, and this is not a good excuse, I'm not trying to make an excuse, but unfortunately it draws directly from our Munis system. And the way the housing bond was set up in Munis, this is bureaucratic talk now, it does not lend itself to giving that information. So it was not set up the way it should have been. So we will not be doing that again, ever again.
Well,
Clay makes a good dashboard.
Yeah.
we're getting rid of this system.
Yeah.
Systems anyways.
Has the city used any of the money to help subsidize units and like housing projects that are under construction so that there's like a mix of units in like a new project?
So what I didn't talk about is our land use incentive program. So there's two main programs we have for funding of affordable housing. The Housing Trust Fund, which is our loan program, and then our land use incentive program. Technically, the Housing Trust Fund can fund a mixed income project. The minimum is 20% of the units have to be affordable. Generally speaking, the projects we get applying for that money are 100% affordable. And we're kind of emphasizing that. So this year, we did have a project that was applying for money. It was mixed income. And we felt, and we worked with some consultants over this, we felt they could get the money elsewhere. So we're really trying to be that gap financer. Like we're a low interest loan provider. So we're the gap financer, and we're trying to be like, if you didn't have our money, you wouldn't be able to build the project. So we felt like that project could get the funds somewhere else. And sure enough, it's under construction today. So, so you could use it for that. I mean, technically, the state statute for bond money is 20% of the funds, or 20% of the units have to be at 60% area median income or below. We do have a project down on Biltmore that council has approved that is mixed income. So it's 30% affordable and then other market rate units. And it doesn't have those other layers of funding in it. Land use incentive grant, sorry to go on so long, is a tool that's really, it's like basically
He
promising.
works for Urban 3.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Not
Land use incentive
formally.
grant.
Oh, not anymore. Well, you'll get it.
Okay, land use incentive grant is kind of promising future tax rebates for like performance. It's kind of a whole scoring chart, not unlike in a
tax.
way from the hotel chart. But its baseline is 20% units, and we don't see usually more than 30% in those
Okay.
projects.
And how often do people take advantage of those incentives?
Well, we put a pause on it, so we're not doing it right now. 2022 and 23, we had a lot of projects. We had something like 7 or 8 projects come through.
Such that we're reevaluating the criteria.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Do we have any projects in any of these funded by the 2016 bonds in downtown in the CBD?
No.
No?
I think, let me think about this. CBD zoning, no. 319 Biltmore, some people might consider that downtown.
360 Hilliard.
Oh, 360 Hilliard, I'm sorry,
I
yes.
just want to piggyback on that. My question is like, how do we do that?
319 Biltmore.
Is it
So,
is it
yes.
incentivizing developers that are coming in and building housing to have a portion of them be affordable because the city is offering them money?
So,
or
yeah, so I think, we're at a point now where it's,
Is it through hotels? and maybe partnering with the benefits table in the hotel to say, hey, like, you're going to be building affordable housing on site, but we're going to be helping you with some of the financing?
So there's a couple answers to that question.
Yeah.
360 Hilliard was a project that started probably in 16, 17, going through council. It's 30%
Burned down
affordable, or 40% of the units are affordable for 50 years, which is a really big deal. Some are at 80%, some are at 60%. And it got several layers. It got city-owned land at a reduced cost. It got a housing trust fund loan from the bond. Then it also got a land use incentive grant. So there were multiple layers that it took to get that
I thought it was across the
project
street
done. From the Avery.
Yeah, I don't think we reviewed it though, did we? Do you remember?
Sure, it went through
It
design.
was just so
Yeah,
long
it
ago.
did.
Before
because
your
it
time.
burned
It was
down.
before your time.
No, it went through the design review.
It went through
the
us.
subcommittee when
Yeah.
we were the subcommittee.
Yes.
I remember looking
Yeah.
at it because it was at an
Sorry,
Atlanta
yes.
farm. It was
And
at
remember,
Atlanta
it
farm.
burned and started over.
Yes.
Okay.
So the second answer to your question, what was it? You were saying something about, we're at a point now where I think affordable housing is so scarce and we need to make the absolute most of our money that it's a real policy question of like, should we be putting our money into mixed income projects, or, you know what I mean? Like, or where
Well,
do you spend your
I
money?
guess I'm wondering, yeah, like, do you not get more bang for your buck by giving money to a developer who's already developing a project to just help them?
Reduce rents.
Yeah.
But
I
it's,
mean, that
it's
happens
different, the
some-
amounts of money are different, right? So,
One of the things council is
yeah.
talking about in its planning and economic development boards and housing is how to improve the large multifamily projects into more of a prescriptive or by right process, similar to just what we just talked about with hotels,
Yeah, yeah.
whether it's an overlay or an upzoning of areas and corridors and such, but the goal being that these large projects would create the affordable units without such significant subsidy or time or effort from council, because we're spending a lot of time reviewing these projects. And then if that were to happen and these large private apartment complexes could start creating a flow of units, then we could spend some of our bond money on better down payment assistance or different programs that reach lower AMIs and so on. It could be more creative. Right now what we're seeing is some of our best tools are the HTF, our Housing and Trust Fund, that is a low-interest loan. And we're getting some bang for the buck, but predominantly it's these large projects that are getting subsidized, and we need to be a little more creative.
Sure.
did that answer?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Is there any requirement for mixed use in these low-income projects? Because that creates opportunities for people who have low incomes. If there's also low rent retail space available in the same neighborhood that their apartment complex, or even in the complex itself. Because I'm a fan of neighborhoods, and building low-income housing is awesome, obviously, but we also have to think about affordable neighborhoods where people can afford to rent retail space, build their incomes.
Childcare.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult, and a
Okay.
couple of reasons why. One is I'll just say affordable housing developers, that's what they do.
Okay.
And the minute you ask them to do retail, or they're like, okay, like that, it adds a whole nother, like, and you all could maybe,
Finance package, everything.
yeah, they get very antsy. And we did do that with 319 Biltmore. We do have a retail space in that project. It's not huge. It requires a different kind of management of that unit versus somebody who just manages residential. There's a whole bunch of requirements, code. It's a different kind of architecture, you know. And then there's also several of these projects, Amaranth, Maple Crest, Fairhaven Summit, Star Point, Laurelwood, and some others that aren't on this list. They're tax credit projects, and I don't think NCHFA, they're not interested in that.
They won't allow it in the project,
Yeah.
but they do give you points if you are closer to neighborhood and
Right.
transit and things like that. So a lot of NCHFA projects, you won't get the points if you're not, so.
Okay.
Right, so we are definitely talking about the placement and trying to emphasize that you're near those services.
For like
Okay.
Amaranth.
Right,
Yeah, because a neighborhood without restaurants, retail, groceries,
Yes.
it means you got to get in your car and drive to another neighborhood.
absolutely. As a planner, I'm all about it, like, believe me.
Yeah, and my other question was about home repairs. I happen to live in a neighborhood that has a lot of elderly folks that have own homes, but perhaps their tax burden is getting a bit
Right.
much, and I see their houses getting worse and worse over the years, and I just
Yep.
wonder, how do we all as neighbors talk to our neighbors about how to take advantage, like, is there a way for those people to take advantage of some of those home repair funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and that would be through partners. We haven't done this yet, so it's a creation of something new, and we're exploring all the different avenues. Buncombe County does fund this pretty well, but it still needs more money. So Habitat, Mountain Housing, Community Action Opportunities, and there's a few others, even Poderema works on this. There's 5 or 6 organizations here that are working on this issue, so it's kind of, yes, but that's a great question. I'll keep that in mind because I do think there's actually a program out in Swananoa with a nonprofit that does kind of what neighbors actually come together and do some of those repairs for
Okay.
elderly folks too.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to keep moving us
Yes.
along.
One,
sorry.
one
No,
last
no, no,
question,
you're doing
though.
great.
We were usually doing a biannual Bowen report kind of study, housing assessment. Are we still planning to continue on doing those?
Well, the housing plan, which should be coming out next week,
Had
has
some of that built in?
has a lot of data in there.
Okay, but updated data? Or do we need to keep doing assessments with Bowen? I mean, we had the big one from Dogwood, that
and
kind
I
of filled
don't,
that
you know, I'm
gap.
not involved with the consolidated plan, which we have to do every 5 years, part of federal. Often the Bowen report was done in conjunction with that, and I'm not sure what they're doing for their data piece. I should know that. but-
Okay.
We're going to, if it's okay, we're going to move on to the
Yep.
UDO updates and keep going from there. Is that good? Thank you, Sasha.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Collins. I'm the Assistant Director of the Planning and Urban Design Department, and I'm going to get a real nice segue from Sasha's presentation on affordable housing and her mention of the collaboration between our two departments to try to promote and incentivize this need for the community. So real quickly, I'm going to go through the first part relatively quickly for you. A lot of this was referenced in Sasha's presentation where she mentioned things such as anti-displacement measures. But the main idea here is there are really 2 things going on right now with UDO updates. And one of those is happening right now, but it is for a little later implementation as it's a little bigger lift. And that is looking at implementation of changes within the city's residential zoning districts. So that's our RS2, RS4, RS8, our RM districts that are really sole purpose residential districts and make up most of the city's neighborhoods, right? Outside non-mixed use neighborhoods, what you think of. So right now what's going on is work on strategies for anti-displacement that involve a lot of programmatic things that you just heard about, right? Such as home repair and things like that, and looking at how planning and zoning efforts can help guide this within the neighborhoods as well. So we've got teams looking at adopted and existing neighborhood plans, figuring out what is needed in all these places. All that needs to be understood and in place before we make changes in those districts, right? And that'll be going on this whole time. But while we're doing that, we want to go ahead and get some changes on the books to promote and incentivize housing, right? So the first implementation, we are looking at our, what I'm calling really transit supportive corridors and mixed use zoning districts, right? So that is what it sounds like. When I say corridor, it's most of the things you would think of probably. We're looking at our tunnel roads, Merriman Avenue, Hendersonville Road, those types of places, and our mixed use districts that are around West Asheville, the River District downtown, right? Those types of places to make a few key changes. And we know that this is going to come in 2 batches. I'm going to take you through a little schedule on that, but some of the things we know that we're working on right now, well, we know because we are working on them, right? Our development review threshold changes. That's that whole by right, level 1, level 2, level 3 that we've heard about through all 3 presentations today a little bit. And changing our minimum parking requirements for residential developments. And looking at those zoning districts that make up those corridors and mixed-use zoning districts to see what is something that's that's keeping us from promoting, that's a barrier to housing, and also trying to mold this to look like the comprehensive plan. Most of these have not been updated since the comprehensive plan was adopted. So this is also our chance as we go in there to look at those and see how we can take the ideas from the comprehensive plan, like multimodal supportive development, things that lend to the idea of living in closer proximity and easier access to the things you need, and transportation options helps. And also, on top of those base changes, we are looking to introduce another concept that's been referenced this morning, some incentives for affordable housing, whether that's kind of a public benefit thing, or that's bonuses on top, or that looks like a phase one in this first batch and something else. We want to make it easier to build housing, all housing, but we also want to give people a reason to, an incentive to build affordable housing, and some of the stuff that Sasha referenced that we need so badly in the community. So that's kind of the high level. I'm going to slide through these real quick. This is just some of the places we're taking our data from. This is from the Missing Middle Housing Study, the displacement reports within there, where we've been able to identify areas that have been identified as green, yellow, and red, right? So neighborhoods that are kind of experiencing high change and are still vulnerable to that change are at the red spectrum. And that's kind of a baseline as not today's conversation continues, but as you hear more about this. All right, so I've made a little reference to this just to take you through what you'll see play out as this goes through different committees and commissions. Is first of all, we are looking to be in front of City Council at the end of October with that first round of updates for corridors and mixed-use districts, right? And that's going back to the other slide. We're looking at parking changes, we're looking at district changes, setbacks, height, whatever we think can help that housing get built, and thresholds especially. City Council reviews a lot of projects here. Anything over 50 residential units goes to City Council for review. So we have heard that as a bit of a barrier for folks who are trying to build that affordable housing. Then we're going to be working, hopefully we'll get that adopted in October, be working on through to January for a second batch of amendments to that, right, to those corridors and districts. I can't tell you exactly what those look like yet. We're going to try and fit everything we can into batch one, but at some point we'll run out of time to do anything else. And whatever we can't fit into batch one is going to move to two. And as you see, this whole time, that concept of working on what these neighborhoods need and working with Sasha's department on anti-displacement measures will be ongoing as we keep going towards eventually looking at those changes in residential districts as well. All right, so I really kind of let the cat out of the bag on a lot of these things already, but we'll just go ahead and do one little pass through again on that first detail of what we're looking at. We really want to increase site flex for that first round. We're looking to increase site flexibility in several zoning districts. This will touch a lot of districts around town when you look at those corridors and districts. Change other zoning districts as appropriate and other zoning sections. Whenever you change something in our 1997 UDO, several dominoes fall, our Unified Development Ordinance that spells out how we develop sites as well as what we can do where. So as the process folds, there will be changes to other areas. Increase and add incentives for housing and affordable housing. In fact, hopefully actually activate some incentives that are already there that right now don't get used a lot because all large projects are level 3 council projects. And of course, reduce barriers and streamline the review process where we can. That's going to be something we look at the whole way that probably won't require UDO changes, zoning changes, but will require some intentional work. All right, so in detail, we're going to end up bringing forward something that will remove minimum parking requirements for residential developments within identified corridors and mixed-use districts. In the CBD downtown, that's already not a thing. So you'll hear me reference downtown as a really flexible zoning district. So I don't know how many kind of setback changes and things we can really impact there, but development review level thresholds, I've referenced that several times.
So
letting larger housing projects go through by right.
Is this the one that, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
looking at some of the, I've got a little document from P&Z. Is this the one that changes it from number of units to the area?
Right now, that's the concept. We have a few things in draft.
Okay.
Clay is working with us on the team, actually, on what that's going to look like. So I can't really commit to what that final version looks like because we're working fast and furious.
Because that would impact downtown, obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
would, yeah.
right, because right now it's number of units,
So
correct?
down-
That kicks level?
Correct, 49 units or above.
Well, downtown actually is different than the rest in the CBD. Downtown is on a 100,000 square foot
Or
level 3
49 units,
threshold.
though. No?
Yeah.
No, not downtown, that's outside of downtown.
Outside of downtown,
Outside
it's
of
the
downtown, so like
49.
at the RAD or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So this would impact the RAD more necessarily than downtown, because I think downtown is already at 100,000. So this would bring some of the other ones in compliance with
Right.
downtown.
Right, and
Is
basically, yeah, and that's the concept that was put forward and approved by Planning and Zoning Commission was the 100,000 across the board. I don't have the data on the slide, but most of our large residential projects are a good bit larger than 100,000.
What we learned was
square
of the
feet.
22 that we had reviewed in the last 2 years, it would have impacted 5 applications. And
Citywide, yeah.
I say that because I'm
Well-
not convinced that the square footage is the best method.
Yeah,
I
but
get the
we don't-
equitable,
We don't see what we don't see. And I know of a project in the RAD that had to do other things other than housing because it would have kicked him over.
the square footage.
The square footage would not have kicked him over, but
unit
the number
count.
of units would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things we're talking about. We've, ideas around just raising that threshold to 99 have occurred, around raising the square footage to match commercial have occurred. And we're still, I think staff are pulling together all our options instead of just us suggesting what it could be.
But just to be clear to the rest of the commission, neither of these two proposed first two options have anything to do with downtown, because downtown already does not require parking, and downtown already has that development. The proposed change to the threshold would not affect downtown because it's already at that level.
Right, as they're written right now from that PZC approval,
Yes.
that would put that downtown threshold citywide for residential projects.
Okay.
Right. But we'll see what the final version looks like. And then, of course, we've referenced getting into the zoning districts, looking at setbacks, buffers, building heights, things like that for by right options and incentives.
Is that touching the flexible building setbacks? Is that touching neighborhood transition zones? So downtown,
Yeah.
one of the things that we've seen is like when we get to neighborhood transition zones, we have to start jerking
Sure.
the buildings down. And I
For
didn't
height.
know if that's probably not a batch one.
That is probably not a batch one,
Okay.
but you really hit the nail on the head with the kind of things we'll have to look at for when we have a little more time moving into batch two. In terms of writing staff reports, making amendments, engaging the right people,
So,
October's very soon.
It affected, what was the one, the Duke, I think? It affected their height. They had to pull some stuff down on the back end because they're up against a neighborhood right there, and which is, yeah, that's not a terrible thing, but it's reducing density, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry, keep going.
All right, and just to summarize everything I told you, we are coordinating implementation of the Affordable Housing Plan and the UDO updates together. That first batch is going to focus on promoting housing along corridors and with those urban mixed-use districts. And then we'll start to look at neighborhoods as residential anti-displacement measures are better understood and we know when they're going to be implemented and how. And this has already been referenced, but Planning and Urban Design and Community Economic Development will be giving a presentation in September on this entire concept of how we're kind of interweaving those affordable housing plan elements and UDO updates. Date September 24th, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, questions?
Can I ask a question about displacement?
Yeah.
How is the city defining a vulnerable neighborhood or a person at risk of displacement?
Sure. I'll start an answer, and this is what I can start to tell you is there's been work done through the Missing Middle Housing Study, probably some data on the Affordable Housing Plan too, and that's providing some data points for us to go on. This is one map, but there's several maps that analyze various characteristics of neighborhoods that-
And this was pulled right from the missing.
Yeah,
middle housing
this
studies
graphic
spreadsheet.
straight out of the missing middle housing plan. So, yeah.
And so is there ever any conversation when you're with the anti-displacement work around upward mobility and the agency of the community itself? Like, part of if you are poor, one way to not need government support is to make more money.
Sure.
Right? So if we're worried about displacement, people losing their homes so they can afford it, are we looking at how the pay of workers, so they can, you know what I'm saying? Like, is there work to upward mobility with these people in these neighborhoods?
Yeah. Well, so I don't have the composition of the data from this report in front of me, but it analyzes several factors. Do y'all know the answer?
I mean, I would say that is very important. And if we look at the City of Charlotte's anti-displacement strategy, that is part of their strategy. We have not gotten there yet. I think that's like next stage. That's something, that's another piece of the city we need to integrate is kind of wealth generation or generational wealth too. People to often want, in the community, we heard a lot through the reparations process that people are really concerned about those issues.
Sure, and I think that actually, it came to me because it's kind of touched on Steve's point as well. Like, if you're living in a neighborhood and there's retail space and you're able to open up a convenience store or something like that, it seems like there'll be more options. And it seems like a lot of the conversation around housing today is like, how do we help people live a decent life while staying poor? And I wonder if we can support. I know that's not what you're saying, but like,
No,
without
I
talking
understand.
about upward mobility, it's just helping them because you don't think their income's going to change. But if we help their income change, we can, to Sage's point, we can help more people differently.
Can I ask commissioners to speak directly into the mic, please? We're just getting some comments from folks watching. Thank you.
Yes, and I agree with everything you said, but also we also know that until people are stable in a house, they can't do all those things.
We're in a triage situation.
Yeah, right. Are you done?
Yeah, I think so. Do we have any specific questions regarding, are there any barriers or, so specifically for downtown, the items that are currently under review by P&Z and staff that I've seen at least are not really going to encourage development downtown because these are things that downtown already allows for. And so when we talk about this, we need to understand that the staff and different boards and commissions that are working on this issue, they are removing barriers, I think, in some cases, and probably encouraging some projects, but it will not be downtown projects. And if we want to do something specifically for downtown, we're going to have to suggest some additional policies than what are currently being contemplated. Is that reasonably?
Yes, 100%. Some of the things you saw there, flexing zoning districts, setbacks, and parking aren't going to cut it downtown, so, yeah.
Chris, will you go to that last slide? So we did want to open things up
Yeah.
at this juncture for any, with all of this in mind, that not all of that, we already have a lot of flexibility to build housing downtown. Like, what major opportunities or barriers do you see? Why are we not seeing more housing downtown? What could we do to see more housing downtown? So we want to welcome some of that today.
Well, some of it is just the cost of construction and land downtown.
It's the basis.
The reason we're seeing all these hotels is because that makes the most money,
Right.
right? I mean,
I don't know. Go ahead.
Perhaps a lack of incentive for downtown. I think, potentially opening up and making it more flexible in other areas of town might even be a detractor from people in downtown because, not that we've seen hardly any development, but we might see less if people can build easier elsewhere. I'm pro-housing, don't get me wrong, anywhere, but we might have to add some layers of incentive to get people to downtown.
Is there anything about, oh, my mic is definitely on now. Sorry. What about sort of back to people's lives and where they work, the sort of jobs that are, if people, disenfranchised communities want to live near their work because gas and cars are expensive, a lot of the jobs that people in certain communities end up working are not in downtown. And so wanting affordable housing downtown is not necessarily useful to people who work in Arden.
I'm not sure we can answer that question this morning. Part of what I wanted to make sure that you folks knew what was going on in other parts of this, because this is something that I'm very interested in, that you all said that you were interested in. And honestly, the steps that the city is taking, I'm on board with. You know, a lot of these UDO changes, a lot of the work that Sasha's doing, some of the stuff that's getting ready to come out. But you need to understand, to Hayden's point, basically everything the city is doing is actually going to pull even more housing out of downtown. And if we're going to get in front of that, we need to be thinking about it like now.
You know, some of the things, I remember before council, just being on this board, we would do our annual retreats and kind of target goals. And I remember for a couple years in a row, it was trying to create a boom of housing in downtown. That was our goal. And I wonder, we also had that parking committee going, and we were looking at surface lots that were left available, untouched. And I wonder if one thing we could do is look at those surface lots, see their size. I mean, how do we start to attract development to them? You know, are there things we could be doing? Maybe it should be part of this upzoning, or
Like a
downtown's pretty
TIF
free.
in downtown.
Well, we could do a synthetic, but I mean, we do already via the land use incentive grant in some ways. But it just might be another way to look at it. You know, how much is left to build in downtown? How much is city-owned? How much is county-owned? Because the county has some large parcels. Another factor is how much has been approved and isn't coming out of the ground. Because I was starting to think about this yesterday, and I was thinking about the micro units on Hilliard.
That's right.
The other
And
two micro units on, I
Aston.
think it's on Aston.
Aston.
The one across from the hot spot, which I did see some activation and
Well,
some
we had a
land
bazillion
clearing
units
there.
going in on Cox.
The 550, I hear that might come back, but as a smaller amount.
Yeah,
And then
right.
it could die again, right? Now we've had even plans as much as like the Aspire. And there are others. I mean, I think I listed 5 or 6 in an email with staff, like, you know, what are the barriers?
You
Let's
just
talk about
probably
that.
listed 1,000 units.
It's more than that. It's a lot.
Have
And
you
what
a-
are the
have we
barriers?
asked
I'm
that?
hearing anecdotally that it's the financing mechanisms right now, and that
It's
everything is
100%
being run through
financing.
private capital. And if you don't have access to private capital, you know, it gets a little wonky. But it'd be curious to maybe even reach out to those projects and ask a couple questions and see if there's some synthesis of data or opportunity there.
Well, so I think there's a couple things that we can start thinking about. Is that one, why aren't we getting more smaller projects? Why do they all have to be gigantic?
Land cost.
Yeah. So, but then there's the development cost, and there's stuff
Yeah.
that goes into that. And then there's okay, if they have to be gigantic, then what incentives can the city actually offer on something like that? Because the city's not going to start financing $80 million affordable housing projects.
Yep. It's curious, and
That's
maybe all
not,
these
that's not
together.
our role.
Yeah.
Does
I
city
also-
staff, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Does city staff consult with developers to get their take on things like this?
Yes, we will be.
So does
That's
city
part of,
council.
I mean, we hear a lot of things throughout the process of working with developers first off, so we know that.
And we're bringing back what we call the Developers Forum. It's something we used to do in the past, where annually we would bring together for an all-day event, like an assortment of the different parts of the, like lending, you know, the architects. Well, how is the whole thing coming together? Let's get them all in a room and hear what the problems are. Is there something within the zoning that needs to be adjusted and tweaked? We used to do that where I think Steph, our planning director, is bringing it back this year, I think, next year.
Yeah, we have some standing groups too, like there's a development customer advisory group, which has various
Yeah.
professionals from there, Brian's on there. And we're planning on doing some focus groups with key folks on these UDO changes that we just covered.
You know, the Affordable Housing Committee has a subcommittee called Build that you might really like.
Okay.
They nerd out on this stuff, and they get together and have water and other things.
Do we, I apologize, but we still got like a couple other big topics.
Just a quick request or recommendation as we continue the housing discussion downtown is to see if the county would be willing to come and give us a presentation on their affordable housing bond and the due diligence they were doing on, I think, 3 lots in downtown. I don't think much has happened since then, but it would be worth getting an update. Okay, well,
Yeah.
great. It would be great to get an update then. Perfect. Then it would be nice to see an update.
Okay.
Yeah, that's moving forward, I understand, so, yeah. All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. I'm gonna move us on if I can, and go to the next item. So we're gonna do the development impact review for the Grove Arcade, proposed conversion of the Grove Arcade Hotel, and then the 45 Southside Hotel and condos projects. And then we'll finally let Ben address us on the bid. So the first item of business is the Grove Arcade Hotel. Did you
Yeah, I mean,
you want to recuse?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I will recuse myself from this discussion.
So we have a motion. Robin is works with the architectural firm that is proposing this project, and Ricardo as Robin's partner they both requested that they be recused from our discussion on the Grove Arcade Hotel project, right? Okay, so that's a motion. Is there a second?
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. We're not, this is not a item that requires our approval, so I don't think they have to leave the table or anything like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we're just, this collecting information and talking about policies related, we're not really doing a development project review here. There's not a lot
I was
going.
supposed to say that, thank you.
Yeah, okay. There are two issues, I think, with the Grove Arcade project. One is the conversion of residential units to lodging units. The second is what's happening to the building. And virtually nothing is happening to the external aspects of the building. There are no changes proposed. The design review committee already looked at it. The conversion issue is presenting, is a policy question. It's an instant kind of event that highlights that this mic is really hot. Can you turn it down a little bit?
I like it.
I'm a loud speaker, and I know people want to hear me at home. There you go. That's perfect. That sounds better. That's kind of the issue. And so this represents something that you as the Downtown Commission would be concerned about, the conversion. We haven't the application is not complete yet. It's still in process. And the reason it's only gone to the design review committee is because it's technically a level 1 project. And that means that because it's just converting from one use to another, it gets reviewed at the staff level. It won't go to the technical review committee. It won't go to the council. It'll just be processed through our regulations.
It doesn't even go to P&Z.
It doesn't even go to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And the only reason that we're talking about it here is because it is very much within the policies. So just to be clear what's happening, the Grove, the management company of the Grove Arcade. So the Grove Arcade is owned by the city of Asheville. They have I think a 99-year lease that we're so many years into with a management company. And that management company, my understanding, is requesting to convert 35 rooms, existing kind of basically condo/apartments to a hotel. And so it's literally just, there's almost no physical change to the building. It's just a change to how these things are being used. There's nothing within that this commission does to approve or disapprove it. We're looking at it as this is one of the results of the policies that we have in place. Does that make sense? That's
Yes.
what I was supposed to do that as an introduction.
and that's
my sincere
basically it.
apologies. And so when we reviewed it on design review, it was like, well, it's a great building and they're not changing it, so there's really nothing we can say. Here we are. Am I making sense? So that's kind of where we are with it. Now, I think there are folks in the community that are having heartburn that we are, we just had this conversation. This is housing. It's not affordable housing, but it is housing. And that housing stock is being moved from the housing column to the hotel column.
Well, that is something that I can't remember in which presentation, but they said when there's not enough deeply affordable housing for low-income people who can afford more go to the deeply affordable units. And so if we're now displacing rich folk and they want to live downtown and it's easier to build housing for rich people, we are now creating a more market and more drive for more non-affordable housing. I think the project should still go through. That's not my business. I'm just saying the math does work out.
Earlier, when I was talking about the presentation this body got about affordable housing, I remember the data, I presented it, so I remember. It was a number of housing units, a number of hotel units, and at that time, they were pretty close to each other. And in the analysis, I learned that there had been hotels in downtown that had converted to housing, several of them, but we hadn't yet seen housing convert to a hotel. And yeah, I'm not a fan, and my understanding is there's nothing I can do on council.
We're here to lament.
I don't, whether it's a lament or not is up to each individual.
Yeah.
That you just got to look at it that, okay, this is, so a couple of things. One, the architect for the project noted during design review that when they did the preliminary back in the 90s, when they were designing because if y'all remember, the Grove Arcade was a wreck. At the time, the building needed a lot of repairs, and they were actually looking at turning it into a hotel. But in the 90s, there was no market for a hotel in downtown Asheville. That's kind of so. And it's not that the building doesn't lend itself to that use as a building, but to everyone's point, we are moving, displacing residential use. And filling that with a hotel use. That residential use is going to go somewhere. And it's residential use that's going to go, is it going to stay downtown? Where's it going to push to? And what are the downstream effects of that? And this is, there's nothing in our policies that would, other than some attorney stuff, I don't know of any reason this is not going to get approved or shouldn't under our current guidelines.
Should we ask the question, I guess in another meeting when we're talking about policy, what does it say about our beautiful city that people would rather cater to tourists than to their neighbors, even the neighbors who can afford it?
I mean, I hear that sentiment from some folks, but, it's downtown. The argument is that all uses are welcome in downtown. I just hate to see the loss of the housing units. Really, I want us to, again, what this board set out to do years ago was have a boom of housing in downtown, and it didn't mean visitors. And we have a lot of visitors, but I've been talking with our city attorney, and the only thing that has even come up as an idea is a condemnation of the lease, which I don't think we would be doing, and we'd have to buy it out, and that's like a whole different story.
That's
It's like a different, yeah. But I did ask the question, is there anything we can do? And I'm not suggesting we go that route. That's just what I was told.
Okay. Keep that one in the back of your mind. It's to me, that's part of the housing discussion. It's part of the hotel discussion. It's part of the hotel overlay discussion. Yeah. Obviously, we do want hotels downtown.
Sure.
And obviously, that's not a terrible location, and it's a great building. So, there's part of me that's like, well why not? It's already got all the things that we ask a hotel to do. They're in place, and it's going to work well. It is still mixed use. These are not, they're not proposing the offices or the retail. It's just the residential units.
So the restaurants,
And not even
retail
all
will
of
not
them.
be impacted at all?
Correct.
The exterior design of the building won't be impacted?
Correct.
Will the hotel be doing improvements to the building?
Not that I'm aware of, and it's not
Okay.
even all of the residential units.
So some of the residential units will
Are gonna
remain?
remain.
Do we have an estimate on how many people will be displaced?
35 units is the max that I've heard, and I don't know how many people that would represent.
And what is the process for
Is
displacing
that
them?
because of our threshold? The
Yes.
35 units? So there's something to consider as we talk about overlays in the future. The 35, how many units of housing are in there?
I believe 40-something.
Right.
So did y'all catch that when we talked about the tiers of hotel overlay, that they're staying
So
at
it's mostly
35 because that's the lowest tier and the lowest requirements?
Okay. So
That's why they're not doing all the
Just
units.
an arbitrary number.
So the real question is what can we learn from this experience?
That's it.
Like, should we ask these people, like, why, if this was the original plan in the 90s and then it switched, and now you're going back to it, and it seems like the only reason that's stopping you from doing the whole thing is a policy. What can we learn as we start trying to pimp out more mixed use, affordable housing spaces? Why is this not going in that direction? What has deterred this management group?
That's very good.
Yeah.
Are the units individually owned?
Some of them.
Because I'm reading the letter from the attorney that says certain residential units can be rented on a flexible basis when not occupied by their owner or long-term resident. So
That's what I thought too. I thought this was more so to do like a, not Airbnb, but
Yeah, if that's what it
short-term
feels
rentals
like.
of their individual units.
Wow.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I believe the units are owned by the entity, right?
Right.
All-
Rentals, but it's part of their, I don't know if part of their proposal is changing that or what, but right now they're rentals.
So they're all rentals.
Is that sort of like 55 South Market, where like the first 2 floors are like approved Airbnbs? with
Oh,
the-
45? No, 55.
Like it's like well, like it's,
Yeah.
they're
Well,
all
those were the
owned, but-
last ones in, actually. That was literally the last project that had some short-term rentals built in before the ban.
Right. So.
So they squeaked in.
Right. So yeah, I think somebody should ask, why this change? What can we learn? How can we avoid this?
It sounds like the last time we touched the lease was 2018, council at that time. I wasn't there, but that's the last time it could have been changed. And I don't think that we can change it now that this application is in.
Let's
42 units according to the Asheville Citizen Times.
Okay. I think your comments, the comment I'd like to kind of end on is what can we learn from this? And so let's think on that a little bit, and if we can, let's go ahead. I want to keep us moving again. It's 10:30. Let's talk about a condo project, 45 South Side. So this project is coming to us before it's gone to the DRC, because I've seen this, but I haven't seen this.
It says hotel and condos. Is it hotel also?
Of course.
Just thought I should point that out.
What can we learn?
So this project is one of the more traditional projects. This is a level 2 that has gone through the TRC process. This lot is currently it's between Millard. No one is Millard. Anybody know?
Millard.
Millard? Thank you. It's between Millard and Southside Avenue. It's a parking lot. To the northeast of the parking area is, I believe, a transmission car repair facility. And to the southwest, I believe, are a couple of buildings that are in various stages of use. It's an underused property. It's up on Millard is Pisa, and across the street from this site roughly is Burial Brewery's kind of campus now. It's been through TRC. It is coming to the design review committee. It's a single building, and it's a combination of both condos and hotels. So this is like that building you were talking about. It's that approach. It's got 2 levels of parking proposed. This is the south side facade. The entire right side, to the right of the subsurface, or the surface level but structured parking, is separate, identified, leasable space. We don't know what the breakups on the floors. I assume that the hotel's units are going to be on the lower floors and the condos are going to be in the upper floors. On the back side of this building, and it does have a back side, is what's fronting onto Millard, which is this lower right-hand corner. And that was one of the big issues in my review. I'm reviewing this application, or managing the review. We talked with the applicant about trying to activate Millard. It's going to be great to see Millard start coming to life. There's an approval across the street that's unbuilt for lodging and residential, same kind of mixed-use thing. And this is the streetscape in the lower right for Millard. And there's an entrance and then the surface parking area. And it's set back from the road. Now, in the UDO, you can set back from the road as long as you engage it with plaza space, and they do have to still add some more activation. So we're working with the applicant to come up with some options so that the building can engage with Millard a little bit more than it does now, and that it doesn't look like the back of the building. So, but other than that, you know, I'll leave it at the architectural so you can get a flavor for it. The south side activation is exciting. There's a lot of new stuff there. There's not a lot going on down in that area of Southside Avenue. And this really brings a pedestrian scale and kind of a nice connection. And like I said, the next review will be the design review committee, then planning and zoning, and then final TRC will complete their planning process. So that's kind of where it is.
So it's just residential and hotel, there's no other uses proposed?
They haven't identified the actual uses. All that ground floor that you're looking at is going to be separate space.
Okay.
So it'll be commercial, retail,
All right,
whatever.
I wasn't clear on that, thank
Do
you.
they say the breakup, like how many
Yeah,
many
it was-
units condos versus hotel rooms?
So many units in my head.
Right.
Maybe we need to talk to this developer, because this project seems like a really nice scale, in my opinion.
Oh, sure.
It's not quite tiny, but it's also not huge.
And are they reusing an old building? No.
It feels like a good size.
I see 40 bedrooms, but that's the only thing I can
Yeah,
find.
21 guest rooms, and then the rest is condos, and so maybe 20 units or something.
Huh. Or 10 two-bedrooms.
Sorry.
Well, one of the things I find fascinating is that there's a clear synergy between housing and hotels. You know, they can move back and forth between the two very, very easily, quickly. Clearly, we're seeing that at the Grove Arcade.
Clay,
Yeah.
I have the answer.
21 hotels, 7 condos.
That's
Thank you, Daniel.
21 hotels, 7 condos. Okay.
Say that one more time.
21.
Wow,
Oh, that's a choice.
interesting.
What were you saying about synergy?
Well, just that they can, you know, move back and forth between the two. That you know, a lot of times they are grouped together. That we can get kind of both at the same time, and that there's a flexibility between which use they are. Indigo from long ago is a similar. We have several buildings that were hotels at one time and became, you know, a residential. Battery Park, Vanderbilt, a couple others like that. So that's interesting, and I agree with you that this is a scale of a building that I'd like to see more of. Actually, I'd like to see buildings like this, though, that were part of a fabric of a streetscape instead of just like this looks to me like it could be sitting out in I'm getting design review, sorry.
But to your point about synergy, also the communities have the same concern, which is they're too expensive. People would like it if they had a family reunion. Everybody was paying $400 a night for hotels, and I like for my rent not to be as high as it is. So I think we keep talking about the market, but at what point does the market come down?
And when we say condos, they're for sale.
We're not allowed to regulate based on that, so it's kind of a weird. Like we can't dictate to a use that provides sales, but that implies sales.
Yeah, but I'm just
But-
curious because I think Indigo, it's for sale condos at the top, right? And is there a reason for that financially rather than having for rent units when they're
Well,
grouped in
in
with
North
hotels?
Carolina, you have to raise a certain amount of money ahead for condos, yeah. But I think what is it, 50%? You have to have 50% of the units financed.
It seems like you're
so-
mixing different financial models.
Well, and
in
one thing
building.
that
Seems
is interesting
strange
is that, this reminds me of 45 Ashland, which was all condos, and throughout the review process, we said, oh, you're building condos, this is great, but they won't be short-term rentals, right? And then the condos were sold to a management company or by a fleet of individuals under one management company, and then they became short-term rentals somehow. So it's been
It's the same developer. Same developer.
Oh, it's the same developer. Imagine that.
Okay,
So-
so should we be,
The purpose of a system is what?
It's,
wary of
it's
this
curious.
developer
Well, there
then?
shouldn't be allowed to, like, it is
Yeah.
actually not, there's not an allowance for an individual to rent their condo, short-term rental, whole unit. But, so we might need to do a little due diligence on what's happening at 45 Ashland and see how that's transitioned and talk to them about
See
it.
Stu's face.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't 45
Some
Ashland make
BS
it
right
in just
there.
before the changes?
I don't think so.
Well,
No, I remember specifically that one and 17 North Market, which is still in the media around. They were approved as condos and now are short-term rentals, and we're having an enforcement issue. Just highlighting it. I obviously don't know if that's the intent here. I haven't talked with these people, but I've seen that activity elsewhere.
Well, so to Clay's wonderful matrix here that he's filled out, this is a parking multimodal. It's great for that, right? It's doing some things that we like for economic development, but if it does have those spaces on the ground floor, which would, that, if you're familiar with that side, there's going to be a lot of changes coming to this little area in the next couple years, I foresee. Livability, okay, yeah, pretty good. Urban design, I've got thoughts. We'll talk about that at DRC. I don't see anything in sustainability. I don't see anything for equity, racial justice in what they're doing right now. I would say that it's kind of aligned with the downtown master plan. I mean, we're providing residential and hotel in areas where we want it. So at least as the plan is expressed. So there's a lot of things, it's checking a lot of boxes, but I am concerned that they're doing a little bit of a bait and switch with the condos.
And why do that? Why not just do all hotels and make them extended stays or something? Like, why?
Yeah, 21.
I mean, if it's still under 35 units? I don't get it.
Money. There's something going on.
Yeah.
Well, if
Financing.
you sell them.
The financing
condos,
model
you
is
get
probably
that
what it is.
It's-
Condos up front, financing.
You can get the financing for the condos up front, which gets you over the edge and gets your seed money so that you can pay your consultants, and then you do that. I've
Yeah.
been down that road.
That's
It works.
creative way to get more housing in downtown.
If it's used as housing, that's our concern. That's what we're saying.
She said it's a creative way to get you, if you're using the condo to prime the pump for your
Right.
financing model,
Yes.
you get condos.
Right. Yeah, and I think something that keeps coming up for me personally in these conversations today is that it seems like there's a lot of cultural competency that maybe some of these developers are lacking that are not aligned with Asheville's values. Like I think when we talk about why is somebody you doing condos instead of apartments, because when you sell somebody a house, it's easier to control who lives there, and you happen to know how long they're there. And if there's a certain pricing value in a city like Asheville, you know what hue they are. And so my question is, how often is that happening, and what does that do for the vibrancy of our beautiful city?
Coming from a town that used to have a moratorium on condos, if you get into a position where you don't have the ownership opportunities, it's super rough to get those units back on. And so I'm like, would love to have another conversation about that, but I think the mix is super, super important.
Well, this goes back to what we were looking at with Sasha and Chris, is that I think it's going to get harder to get housing downtown as it becomes easier to get housing out of downtown. So I'm so sorry. I need to quit talking with my hands. Any other kind of comments, questions on this for Clay? 'Cause
I
I'd
just
love
want to
move
thank
this
Clay for considering the back of the building.
Pardon?
I just want to thank you, Clay, for talking about the back of the building.
Yeah.
Because to me, it kind of blows my mind that people think that a three-dimensional object has a back,
Yeah.
right? And that back faces a residential neighborhood or a neighborhood. So thank you for considering that the back should activate Millard Avenue.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not in the rendering.
What?
When they don't have a rendering for
Yeah,
the
when
backside.
I don't get distracted anymore by one side of a building. The DRC has taught me well how to look at buildings. I'm always wrong about what looks cool, but I know activation, that's an objective determination.
It very much is. That's great.
Thanks, Clay.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to be late, but we're doing okay. We're doing all right.
I hope that this has given everybody a lot to think about and chew on as we continue to work towards housing. So I like that. I know it took some time, and I know it was kind of like a broad spectrum in a way, but so hopefully we can use all of this.
Dana and I and Clay have been talking about this for several months, and we kind of pulled lots of different pieces together this morning for a specific reason, which is that this housing and hotel thing and what's going on downtown are all related very, very much, and we're getting certain outcomes, and we're making some changes that are going to actually increase those outcomes, and we need to kind of get it in front of it and on top of it if we do not like those outcomes. How's that? So, Ben.
Speaking of
You're right
outcomes.
again.
Bid implementation. So let me pitch this just a bit for us as Ben gets started. As you know, council has voted on this already. Staff is have met. They've been having meetings regarding the bid implementation, and the RFP is going forward. And so this is our kind of chance to discuss that RFP, and I want us to really think about it in this way: who is going to be overseeing the bid as it goes forward once it's implemented, and then to what standard are those people holding the implementation of the bid to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Downtown Commission. I also want to add to that as we went through this, beginning through the engagement process and beginning to shape what the RFP will be, I do want to thank NER and Stu, because this body did appoint a subcommittee, or a working group, I should say, that helped, and y'all came to a lot of meetings, gave us a lot of feedback. I don't know if Eva Michelle is a mom yet. She is. Well, I will tell her congratulations in the event she is watching, and I appreciate her support. And Jefferson, thank you. You kind of stepped in on the back end of Eva Michelle, so you've been to a couple of meetings too. So I just want to recognize that beyond what staff's done, you've had members that have also participated. I have a lot of information.
Ben, I'm so sorry, but this is Sage. Do we need to recuse Hayden for the same reason we recused Robin?
Let's actually.
I mean, it's up to the
I think that would be
board.
appropriate.
I think it might need to be appropriate, yeah.
Was that a motion?
Oh, I mean, can I make the motion? Am I voting? I'm voting.
The board
Okay.
would have to recuse.
As long as I
her,
can make a
so
motion.
that's-
I would move to recuse Hayden Plemons from the discussions about the bid because of the application status.
I'm curious if anyone else on Downtown Commission has a role in someone who would be applying for management of,
So-
and if they've made themselves known.
Oh, do we have anybody else?
Who could financially benefit from this RFP process?
Okay. Yeah, is there anyone else that needs to be recused that is expressed an interest in applying to the RFP? Or responding? Okay. Thank you, though. Good idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Should I
So-
step away?
No, you
They
just
gotta
can't,
vote
you
first.
can watch and just can't partake, that's all.
Yes, thank you. So we have a motion.
I had moved. I didn't know if there was a
We have
second.
a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, I have a lot of information.
You got 12 minutes.
12 minutes, no, we're gonna get to like the third slide. So just a time check, hopefully that's okay with everybody,
I'm
but,
just messing with
yeah, no, it's okay, I'm adaptable. I'm happy to stop at slides and take questions. I don't know that we can make it to the end, so I guess what I would ask, maybe Mr. Chair, this is your decision, but as I work through it, we can stop when you're ready and I can answer a question, or you can give feedback. Again, I feel like it's, maybe it would be hard, we could find breaks.
Yeah,
Some
let's
points?
let's do this. I'm not going to hold everybody to it. I want to be respectful of folks' times, and so I know a lot of people have some hard stops closer to 11. So let's do the key takeaways of where we are and where we're going, and then we can kind of move forward from there. So let me before you even get into it, does staff need us to vote on anything today?
We would welcome a vote from you all today if there are specific recommendations or if you all would like to voice support in this direction and the content that we're presenting today. I want to be clear that we are not going back to City Council before we release an RFP, so your feedback and any vote is coming to staff, really from an operational standpoint.
Okay.
And we would take it to, like, we are going to a council committee.
Well, let me, could I get at least a quorum of commissioners to agree that we're going to stay till at least 11:15 and try to get through this? Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Then take what time you need. Let's
I'm
get to
gonna
it.
move fairly quickly. So we do have a business improvement district. It's actually a municipal service district. Council put that in place July of 2024. So those downtown property owners in the district will be assessed an additional property tax. We have a boundary. The budget for the bid is estimated to be $1.25 million. We are going to provide those enhanced services through a contractual relationship. So we are going to, through the bid, we're going to contract with a service provider who will then provide those enhanced services. So this is not work the city will be doing. This is the work we will contract for, which is why we're here today, because we have to do that through an RFP process and meet certain statutory requirements while we do that. Just a reminder to the body, the bid services are required to enhance existing city services. So we the city, can't stop doing anything, but we are able to use the contracting process to enhance services. Really, the folks that choose those enhancements are the property owners, the residents, the business owners that are within that district, and those service enhancements are limited to that district. One of the things that council did to provide some additional oversight, and we can talk about that, is when we do select the service provider after the RFP process, that service provider must establish a steering committee to manage, to oversee that service provider. And what council did is they created some framework under which that steering committee is and how it will operate and what it is reflected in terms of participation. So, and I'm going to have a slide that shows that in more detail. Other thing we're going to talk a little bit about is we do want to have, I know accountability is very important to the community, so we're going to propose some things that I hope that will reflect and show the community that we are going to be transparent, we are going to have accountability for how this bid operates. And finally, always got to remind people that it is the city council that sets the bid budget and levies the yearly tax rate. So ultimately, city council will do that every year, or they could choose not to do that. So again, just want to remind, that's a city council decision. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The bid is authorized in state statutes. We've got a boundary, we've got a tax rate. One thing that I thought was very helpful and was in your agenda package is when council voted to approve the bid, they also voted to adopt a resolution. The resolution has been fantastic because it really outlines the direction we're headed. So I will say that staff we have been true to that resolution, and we have tried to make sure that what council asked us to do, we have done as we've moved towards this RFP. And one of the things that we did, I know that the chamber and a group organized and kind of proposed the bid to the community. Council adopted it, but we have went out and did additional public engagement that I'll talk about today, just to try to make sure that we really are reflecting the needs of the folks that are in the bid. I'm not going to read these to you. These are the bid objectives. I'm sure this body has already read these. They were in the council resolution. I think we've shown them before. But I think, again, in terms of our approach to the engagement and preparing the RFP, we have stayed true to these objectives that were given to us by City Council. For those that are visual, here's the timeline, and we're going to have some next steps at the end. We'll go in a little more detail, but just to kind of orient everybody, council adopted this in June. We have spent 2 months doing what I believe is fairly exhaustive public engagement, and I'll talk about that. And we are approaching September. Our goal is to issue the RFP on September 20th, right? Yes. So we're 3 weeks out from that, basically. We've got to stop here, and we've got to stop in 2 weeks at City Council Planning and Economic Development Committee. Hope to have the contract awarded in November. Council has to do that through a public hearing, finalize it, and we want to be able to be in a position where the service provider can start to stand up those enhanced services in January. That gives that provider 6 months. By law, we have to provide enhanced services no later than June 30th of 2025. So we don't get a choice in that.
We being the service provider.
The service provider, yeah, and which the city is ultimately accountable for that, so,
Understood.
right.
I'm just making sure.
Right, so we really want to position the service provider to be successful.
Does that mean that
I
all the services have to
don't-
begin in June 20th?
So
Or-
again, I am not an attorney. Well, we have one here, but he's not licensed in North Carolina. The statute isn't that specific, so I don't believe it means all. I just think it means that it has to be stood up, and we are providing some of those services, or at least in good faith, standing up the ones that aren't quite ready yet. So
Okay.
I don't believe that to be everything, but I believe that to be substantially moving forward.
Okay.
It's my non-legal opinion.
That's a good question. Next.
This is a really important slide. Maybe the most important one for engagement that we're going to have today. This is a summary of the engagement that city staff did. So we did our engagement in 2 ways. We did the tried and true survey. We love doing our surveys. And this slide does reflect the information we received from the survey. But the other thing that we did that I'm really proud of staff is we also did, I wish I had the number 8, 10. We did 10 focus groups, and you'll see more about that in the slide deck. This slide also reflects the information we received in the focus groups. We had varying attendance in those. Our smallest was 3. I guess our largest was probably the COC, the Continuum of Care, which is the whole board and their membership. But this slide reflects what we heard. I'm not going to read all this to you, but I just want to go through it very quickly. And again, the focus groups provided an opportunity to let people talk in kind of an anonymous setting. So I thought we got really candid and direct feedback through and we have an engagement report that was in your packet that I'm sure you've all read, but you get a deeper understanding of what we heard. But transparency and accountability, our community demands that, and so we're going to have to meet that as we move this bid forward. Enhanced safety and cleanliness was absolutely, those are what people want. They want a safer downtown, which can mean different things to people, and we'll talk about that, and they want a cleaner downtown. So we understand that those are the priorities for this bid, at least initially. A lot of conversation over community stewards, also known as ambassadors. In general, not universally, but in general, there was pretty broad support for that concept. So I feel comfortable saying that this community is supportive of community stewards. I think what really matters is the focus of those stewards and what they're actually doing, and I think what we heard is the community wants, there's stewards that can tell you where to go, get a burger or whatever, but I think what's more important is really a community engagement function and being supportive of the downtown, and supportive means of businesses, of people experiencing homelessness, whatever it may be. So not law enforcement. Loud and clear that nobody wants to see these ambassadors try to fill a role that law enforcement currently provides. Enhanced cleaning, and really when cleaning enhancements, I think what we heard is somebody that can be more nimble and agile. The city is not nimble nor agile. So I think the ability to respond to on-demand cleaning needs was really important. We heard that a lot. We heard a lot that we want to see support of people in the downtown that are experiencing homelessness. We want to find a way to connect those people to wraparound services, to housing eventually. So I think the idea is that the bid service provider needs to be a partner in those efforts. And then finally, probably not the priority as much in year one, but we also heard a lot about and this is more what a lot of bids can do, is enhancing landscaping, beautifications. How do we continue to activate and program our downtown? We understand it needs to be safe and clean, but we also want it to be a great place that people want to be. Any questions on that? Is it anything surprise anybody, or is there something missing that you've heard?
I appreciate the term community stewards.
Yeah.
With the enhanced cleaning, does the city have any intention to contract with the bid to, like, for the bid to take over areas that the city has, would be considered baseline services to increase efficiency?
By law, they can't.
I don't think so. I mean, no. I mean, I think so. The best, we do certain things downtown. The city has a contract with W&C Landscaping to do certain things. There's no intention to discontinue that contract. I mean, if there's a point in the future where there's some collaboration with the bid around that, we could,
together, so
that could be,
they
it could be worked together. We could explore that, but yeah, we just have to be very cautious about.
I would say not in year one.
Not in year one, no. I mean, we'll keep W&C Landscaping. Don't worry if you're watching. We're going to continue to use you for our downtown cleaning needs.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mean get rid of them. I just meant like if WNC's, pressure washing on one part, then,
Right. I think that coordination we can do.
Yeah, I
Yes,
mean, not
absolutely.
to have, like, duplicate efforts.
Right.
The bid's already, cleaning in one area, why not?
Yeah, 100%. That I totally agree with. So yeah, we could. I'm going to say this very bureaucratically. We could redeploy W&C Landscaping based on things that the bid could do. So I do think there's space for that, because there may be efficiencies that we can find between those two contracts.
They just have to be careful, because the city is obligated to provide a baseline service, which was defined as prior to the bid, and that document they really can't.
Yeah, we don't want to lose that. I just mean, can they work collaboratively in a synergistic way that
Sure.
enhances the enhanced services to a level that we didn't even think possible?
Wouldn't that be something we would add in the RFP? Like whatever management group did it would be required to work with WNC, the COC, because the same thing with like providing services to unhoused folks. We don't want to double dip and waste time.
Yeah, and that's a great sentence or two we probably need to make sure is in there.
And whoever responds to the RFP, if they are able to speak to that and propose, what that looks like from their perspective, I think that's something that we.
Okay. So one of the conditions then that we might make sure that the RFP is that the applicant coordinates any enhanced services with the current ongoing city services.
It's great. Yeah, great feedback, and we'll do that.
Keep going. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to really move. These are the survey These are the survey responses. So again, surveys give you one type of engagement, or feedback, I should say. Not a lot of surprises here. Actually, there is one for me. I'm going to say that. So cleanliness. I mean, this is something I know we need to do, but I was kind of surprised at how stormwater drain debris removal kind of got high on the list.
It said in the thing, though, that you thought that was because the survey might have been done right when it was really rainy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we did have a couple of rough days
Yeah, we did.
downtown. I think everything in those drains were floating to the drains, actually. But yes, I mean, but all this was, I think, I think these make a lot of sense for a bid and for the city to focus on. The focus groups I thought were really interesting, and again, that's where we got to dig a little deeper in what particular groups want. There's a lot of overlap. So I'll give an example. Like the downtown residential neighbors, they mentioned noise. Now, noise it's come up a lot in the city, but really noise didn't come up at all until that focus group. I don't think the bid is going to address noise directly, but I do think that there is an opportunity for some coordination there. So maybe the employees of the bid actually understand our noise ordinance, know the resources, know how to connect people. So again, we hadn't heard that, and I don't think that's going to be the number one bullet point in the RFP, but I do think that's an example of how a bid, maybe to your point, can coordinate with the city and have a better response. Another example was, I think, walkability. We heard that in the block in East End. We heard that with the residential renters. That's not, I think that is safety. It's a little different, but the idea that we want our sidewalks to be safe and maintained, walkability is important, lighting's important. So again, I think those are things that as the bid matures, that it can begin to work with the city to improve. Public restrooms, and let me flip, a lot of feedback on having good access. In one group, quite frankly, we met with folks that were experiencing homelessness, and one of the primary things that they wanted to see was not just access to restrooms, but access to sanitary facilities. They want to wash their hands, they want hand sanitizer, they want to use the bathroom. So again, I think that's a space where we kind of knew that, but to hear that from multiple groups just kind of reinforces the need for that. I think, again, a bid, is a great opportunity to partner and make sure we have clean, accessible restrooms for our community. Anything else on these that jump out to you?
On the previous slide for, I think, the block east end, it says improving infrastructure and services. Could you clarify that a little bit?
I can, and I think, Danny, you were there as well, so please help me if you want to jump in. I think that was like lighting.
Okay.
There's inadequate lighting in that area. I think sidewalk conditions, crosswalks, is there?
I'll just add, the full report has more details for each of these focus groups as well. But yeah, I think some of the things that the city is responsible for doing, we heard from that group that they would like to see more and better.
Cool.
And just real quick, one of the things I thought was real interesting about that group is also, and this will be in the report, and it will be in the RFP, but this is a good example of, it's not just what happens in the bid, but if there's services in the bid, what if there are unintended impacts or outcomes in like adjoining neighborhoods, like East End, for example. I think like a mindfulness of the city, like let's do good work in the bid with a contracted service provider, but let's also have an awareness of maybe service impacts that could happen outside of the bid. So it's just not, not everything stops at that boundary of the bid. So again, very enlightening and interesting feedback. Anything else on the focus groups? I think it's, again, like Dana said, there's a lot more detailed information in the report. So I'm going to keep moving. We're 11:06.
You're doing great.
Thank you. So I think what that does, it starts to build. We're high level today, and we'll be probably a little more detailed with PED in a couple of weeks. But I think that starts to show you what a scope could look like, what it should look like. There'll be more detail around, and of course we can't show you the full scope because we may have potential folks watching that want to place a bid on that. But I think you start to see what this looks like in terms of the scope and the elements of it. Again, I'm not going to read all that to you, but I think you start to get a feel for what the bid could do. I am going to deep dive on one of these items, and that's community stewards. Anybody have a question? Anything on this list seem?
No, keep going. Yeah.
All right. It's been a hot topic in Asheville, so we just want to kind of address it head on. One of the things that we've learned through the engagement on the community stewards is that what's important, and number one, is training. People want to make sure that if the service provider is hiring community stewards, which they will, they'll have to, we want to make sure that they're hiring people that are going to meet the needs and expectations of the communities. What that looks like is required training. We're going to require the service provider provide this type of training to anybody that's employed. We want to make sure that we're also giving opportunity to people that have lived experience with some of these issues downtown. So we've referenced lived experience with poverty, but that looks different ways. So it needs to be a workforce that's reflective of what it's like to be downtown. Actually, I was surprised at this, but happily surprised. One of the things we heard is they want to make sure that the service provider and their employees get training from the city. So an example of that means is like we want to make sure that we require that they receive training from our community responder program, from APD, from Public Works, from DSD.
Training in what?
What they do, so I think the community responders is a really good example. These stewards, they aren't intended to replace the community responders. Everybody loves the community responders, by the way. That is one universal.
Right.
But they need to understand, what role does the community responders play? And I think that shapes the the space that the
Okay.
community stewards would fill.
So they're not training them to be a community responder, they're training them in what the community responder can do.
Can do.
So that the steward
Right.
then knows what resources to connect
Right.
people to. Okay,
Right,
thank
yeah,
you.
and there may be, a steward perhaps is trained and can do some de-escalation, but there is a point where we need a community responder to respond. And so knowing when to call, how to call, things like that.
And Brian, this year with our budget, we added 5 new community responders. At the time, we were like, wait, should we wait for the bid? Because the bid can't replace existing services. So our community responder program is budgeted, fully staffed, so.
So we have a team of
Yeah.
8. We have 5 firefighters, and we have 3 peer support specialists.
It's also maybe when to call the police, when to
Right.
call zoning enforcement. So there is ongoing education that can be
Got it.
provided in order to help.
Yeah, because we've got a whole different noise ordinance
Right.
staff that, okay, that's a noise ordinance thing, not a APD thing. Don't call the
Right.
police just because somebody's being noisy.
Or if there's a sandwich board sign that's on the wrong side of the sidewalk, maybe the community steward knows enough to walk in and say, hey, business owner, your sandwich board sign is supposed to be on that side of the sidewalk. Versus, but they may say, no, I'm not going to move
That's
it. and they gotta call someone.
de-escalation, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But hopefully relationships. I just say that to say that I think that having good understanding of what the different entities do seems to be an important theme.
Okay.
It goes
Thank
back to collaboration.
Yes.
I think community responders probably get a lot of calls that they don't actually need to respond to.
Right.
Or things that somebody else could handle. And then there are probably a lot of calls that they can't get to because they're a very limited staff.
And then under the role, we want to be really clear, this will be in the RFP. These are not law enforcement, absolutely cannot be armed.
Right.
That was, for the record, that was never proposed by anybody, but I'm just stating that again, so.
With the training, something else that the community has really been talking about is accountability with this. So if they're trained to sort of go up the chain as things escalate, how can we track when someone maybe hasn't done that? And how are we holding those foot soldiers, accountable when they have overstepped?
So my thought on that is, and then is reporting. So I think we would ask the service provider to report these incidents or interactions to us, and maybe even there's some sort of, the reporting includes like what the resolution was. So there's got to be, and we've talked about having that required quarterly. So I think some of that is the city's ability to receive information about these interactions and the nature of them, and somehow use that data to track that. But
Then what? Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're
then
good.
what happens after that? So if you've empowered this contractor to to hire 10 people, and they get this report that these people have committed all these offenses, and they've decided not to fire them, what do you do with that information? Do you fire the contractor?
That's going to lead us, I think, into the oversight board and governance, because what you're talking about is exactly what I was hoping you would, which is what are the standards,
Right.
and who's watching the watchers.
Sure.
But it's also a contractual relationship, right? So whatever abilities the city has to make changes or to terminate would apply to that contract, just like any of the city's contracts.
Right, and I think that's something that as a preparing for this meeting, the community wanted clarity on is with the training and some of these, what falls into the RFP for what they should be prepared to do, and then what's the back end of that? Is
Right.
it the review at city council? Is it city staff?
That's
Whenever
a
you get there.
good question. That's a great. I don't know that I can full. That's a great question. I don't think the city wouldn't be in a position to terminate a particular employee of the contractor. We certainly are in a position to hold the contractor accountable. But yes, when is the point when you haven't dealt with what you need to deal with? And
So it says this, I'm skipping ahead. It says the steering committee is responsible for overseeing and managing the operations and delivery of services. So it seems like that situation would fall under the purview of that steering committee to review. And then the steering committee would report that back to council.
Is this the new word for board that we're using, steering committee?
I don't know, I'm just reading the thing, I don't know.
I'm saying, because is this the board that we had been talking about a couple months ago is now referred to as the steering committee?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's made up of the property owner. years.
Correct.
Right.
So I'll just go ahead and move to that. So that's a good point. So the service provider, so just for context, if you go to Durham or Raleigh, none of this steering committee board stuff doesn't exist. The city contracts with the service provider and they do it, and that's it. So we have this thing in the middle here. When we award the contract to the service provider, we're going to give them some period of time to assemble this steering committee.
So the service provider assembles this?
Correct.
Right.
Oh.
So that's right.
So who are they accountable to if the service provider's the one that's?
City council. So the service provider will bring city council a slate of membership, a composition that meets that. City council has to approve that.
That's why it's not called a board, it's called
That's
a
right.
steering committee.
So think about this. So think about it this way. So the board of directors for this entity, the city council actually gets to choose their board of directors and specifies the membership of their board of directors.
They don't choose them, though. You just said that the
We will. We will either approve their slate or suggest
so if-
suggestions and replacements.
If that slate had one person that the city council didn't like, they could elect to not approve the slate.
Right.
And the slate has to keep coming back
So don't
until
put
city
me on
council approves it.
Okay. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, no, the people, this is like, we are Asheville unique in this. Like, there's not many places that, well, there are outside of North Carolina, but not in North Carolina, a lot of places don't. Yeah, so this steering committee, this is the board of directors, so to speak, for this contracted service provider.
Well, it's not necessarily for the service provider, but it is for this contract.
Right.
You have a contract-specific steering committee, a board of directors that the service provider is in conjunction with the city of Asheville agreeing to.
Right.
They're going
That's
to
right.
then oversee, regulate, administer, or make sure that the service provider is administering the contract on behalf of the city of Asheville.
Right.
And the slate is
I'm coming on board.
And the slate is approved every year with the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
And so in this scenario, just to empower the community with information, you're saying if a contract, the service provider wasn't firing someone who was committing grave offenses, then the way you would remedy that situation is at the yearly review of their contract and their slate, the city council would be responsible for informing them or asking them to fire this offensive hire before their budget, contract, and slate and board slate could be approved. That would be how that would.
Well, I think it would depend on how the steering committee's bylaws are written.
Right.
Right? So I think the steering committee would be the one to say, you're not meeting your metrics, and you've got to meet your metrics, or you're not going to be.
But who checks the steering committee?
That's what I'm.
I think it's city council.
I think the city council does, right? So
Okay.
if I'm understanding the structure correctly, the city council is not directly instructing the service provider.
They're not.
The city council is just looking at a broad report from the steering committee, and the steering committee is the one then, so there's this interstitial thing,
Right.
intermediate, whatever you call it, between council and the service provider, and it's the steering committee.
Correct.
Right.
That they both agree to.
Right, that's right. And so, I mean, obviously, the service provider themselves is in the best position to hold their employees accountable.
Right.
They're
I
not
would-
their employees. The steering committee.
No, I'm saying the actual service provider, like
Okay,
the
yes.
person that gets the
That's right.
contract. They-
Right.
But then I think the next level of accountability would be that steering committee that has this composition
So then,
and is approved by city
So
council.
who do the report, so if you're going to put in the RFP that that they need to report all public contacts, let's say, you put in the RFP that the service providers, community stewards will log every community contact, who they contacted, what the event was, and what the final resolution was. Who does that log go to? Steering committee or city council?
So, and just to be real clear, I don't know how much detail, I mean, it may be more of like, let me just say, as part of like, I think as part of the RFP, we would say, to your point, it's like, because there could be multiple people that apply. Or submit. What is your plan? How are you going to assure us that you're creating accountability. So a little bit of that is in the proposal we get.
Right.
But
The
we
service
are,
provider will be asked to track progress, provide data-driven metrics for
yeah.
meeting the bid objectives.
So I don't want to necessarily dictate all the, but I mean, we need to see from that proposal that they are able and capable of doing that. We actually were going to bring the quarterly reports to you, to this body, if you see the third bullet point, is what we're proposing.
That makes sense that it would be part of weeding out bad proposals to see how they plan on tracking themselves.
Okay, so, because
We were going to also propose putting one of you on the selection committee.
For the RFP.
For the RFP, yeah.
So we're not, DTC is not directly involved in the steering committee.
No,
I've seen
you are
that,
not.
And that's probably good. We've got plenty to do. But we will have a role because we'll be reviewing their quarterly reports.
That's what we've proposed. I mean, I think
I
I think
agree.
the staff
Who
in this
would be-
body are in a position to do that.
Who, in the service provider or the steering committee is providing that report to us?
I mean, I think practically the service provider, but I would hope that that steering committee would have oversight over the service provider's reporting.
Yeah, because if we're unhappy, it seems to me that our unhappiness would be communicated first to the steering committee, not directly to the service provider.
I mean, I think it's also communicated to staff as contract managers.
Right.
Okay.
Matt,
I'm just trying to figure out the chain of command here, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we came to y'all and had a couple of quarterly reports and we were concerned, I mean, I would hope that staff and this body were kind of doing that together, quite
That
frankly.
would be nice.
I mean, I'll be clear, staff is, I mean, we are the administrator of the contract, so we may not always agree, but just assuming we're all in. I mean, I think if we had a concern, I think that the city manager's office would initiate that concern. If I'm the one, I would send it to the steering committee and the contractor. I would want to tell I would tell them both, like, this, we are seeing this trend, we are concerned about this.
Yeah, because
What are you going to do to correct this?
The city of Asheville doesn't have a formal agreement with the steering committee.
We do not, other than that council appoints them, that's it. We get to choose their membership, but beyond that, well,
This
And
is weird. I'm still
Is it,
getting my
because
head around it.
technically, I mean, we've had problems with board or committee, or in this case, steering committee members in the past that we had removed from processes,
Yeah,
you know?
if I'm doing something stupid
Yeah.
up here, then you're going to ask me to step down.
Well, and frankly, as the chair in this kind of setup, if someone here was acting inappropriately, you as chair would need to interrupt it.
Right.
But this is a little bit different, that we're not appointing a chair and it's not, city run. But I would assume the grievance process would come through council.
So again, for the community who's getting lost in all these terms.
Right.
The
Yeah.
touch points here for holding this process accountable is in the RFP process. It would be in the steering committee's bylaws and at the yearly council review of budget and the slate of the steering committee.
That's the final. I think we
Right.
have an input though at a quarterly report that these entities, these two entities, the steering committee and the service provider, are making to this body.
Right. Through the reporting, we have input, but the community at large, if they feel like I was harassed by a community steward and and it's happened 4 times and this guy is still on the street, they can come here, we would go to them, but the final step, if we're all disagreeing, that community member can yell at their city council person about why is this person still working.
And I do think it's similar to any program that the city has operationalized, right? So there are ways that the city can respond to those types of concerns and issues.
Yeah.
Through staff, through council, that can come in different ways.
At some point, they're in breach of contract.
Yeah.
could be. I mean, it's always important to think, like, plan for the worst, right? Like but I mean, obviously, I hope that we're able to select a service provider that if somebody were to call them and say, hey, there's one employee, they would just deal with it, right?
would
That's
care,
the
yeah.
best
They would care.
Right.
We're raising in a worst case scenario.
Yes, of
where we've got
course.
our real-
And we
The
should.
city is ultimately
It's hard to be quiet, isn't it?
right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to keep that clear.
Right.
Okay.
And just and also, my main point was just to assuage the community's concerns that this is not a private board sitting around making decisions by themselves. There are multiple touch points for the community to give feedback and also express concerns if the hire contractor or their subcontractors were out of line.
I think your comments are very much in line with what we heard in our engagement. And I think, the minimum in the state is no, the minimum is you contract and they have one report to the council a year. But this is what we are proposing. I feel like we are trying to go above and beyond the minimum. We have a steering committee. We're actually going to require the service provider to do community engagement twice a year. Again, that's feedback we received. The second one, they have to do that. They've got to do a report to city council annually, but we're going to go another step. So we want quarterly reports to the city manager's office in this body. We're going to be a little more dialed in to like what's on the ground.
Agreed.
Accounting of funds. We want metrics. It's not like, hey, here's a contract, go do it. Well, what are you doing? Show it to us. Now, we got to work through that. We got to give the service provider needs some time to stand some of these things up, so it's going to take some time.
Agreed.
We want to make sure that what they do aligns with our council's strategic priorities. So these are things that we are trying to build in to create accountability, but we have to do it in a way that also allows the service provider to be successful in delivering services.
Okay.
It's good input. I've added it to my list of things. Thank you.
So,
And I do think that a lot of the stuff on the previous slides about like the training and stuff is because of our robust conversation before. So thank you for weighing in so much.
so maybe we'll pause here. So we're almost at the end, I promise. So we are going to release the RFP on September 20th. Responses will be due at some
October 11th.
October's probably the next slide, October 11th. Thank you, Dana. This is, typically these evaluation committees are made up of city. It is, again, this is a staff-managed contract. We would like to have a member from this board as part of that selection committee. It doesn't have to be anybody that was on your working group. It can be anybody. So I don't know, Dana, do we want to I guess we want to decide that probably today.
Let's do that right now. Do we have,
Who's cured?
interested in serving on the evaluation committee? This is probably you're gonna probably need to spend a couple hours per proposal, and you're probably gonna have about 10 proposals, so plan on 20, 30 hours.
10, I don't know that we'll get 10. That would be great, but Jefferson, I'm looking at you, hon.
I know you are.
Oh, I mean, I don't have to,
Stu,
but,
Stu raised his hand.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Jefferson, are you willing to?
No, I think Stu's got it.
okay, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
I'm happy to help Stu.
You're happy to help Stu if
Well, we
if
need one,
need to
huh?
pitch in. We just need one.
But you guys could group,
One would be ideal if you have a great deal of trust in your one member. I think we could live with two.
I think it'd be great if you
Dana,
did it.
Maybe.
Maybe there's an alternate. Like,
Maybe
Yeah.
not.
Let's.
I'm not offended at all. I'm happy to help, but like I said, I don't have a lot of flexibility, so I'm not like I'm not.
I don't know that we need to make a motion for something like this. I'm happy. Well,
Whatever
then
day-
I
whatever day.
move that we appoint Stu Helm as our representative on to the evaluation committee with Noor as the alternate.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
We're going to get there, Ben, I promise.
This is the last slide. So we're there. So this is the timeline. I guess what I'll leave with is appreciate. Look, I've been here a lot in the past 2 years, and I think we've made a lot of progress. I think there's still a lot to do, and I'll just say, if there's anything in this, are we headed in the right direction? I guess, and if we are, we would very much appreciate your recommendation of support. If there's you're in the right direction, but we're okay with that too, just flag those maybe in a recommendation.
Yeah, maybe you could add the things about accountability.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
In terms of deciding how the money is distributed to those different services, whether it's cleaning, ambassadors, special projects, is that going to be proposed in the RFP by the service provider, or is
Yes.
that going to be? Yes.
Yes, they will need to give us a budget.
And we'll approve said budget every year.
So that's not something that the 17-member steering committee is going to influence after they're appointed? I mean, is that not their role?
I would think they would.
I think in future years more so, but here's the challenge in year one is obviously the service provider won't have that steering committee in place, but I just can't see how we could do a contract without a budget. So yeah, this first year, for year one, we're going to have the budget up front.
So what happens if after the steering committee is appointed, they have some disagreements over how the money is being spent
They'll
or
vote.
distributed? Huh?
They'll vote.
I think we
They
could
vote?
we
I
could
don't
do
think so.
contract. We could do contract amendments, and there's ways. So yeah, that entity with their committee could come back to the city and say, hey, we want to amend the contract to do this. we'd have to take it back to council, but there's a path that can happen. Any contract decisions for this amount of money was going to require council approval.
It's the same thing when they
Yeah.
do, I mean, honestly, it's not that much different than when we're going to do power washing here and here and here.
Right.
You have to amend those things
Right.
all the time on
Right.
an annual basis.
That's a good question, though, but I think year 2 on, we'll be in a little better position to have.
Okay. And it's going to be important for the institution applying to the RFP that they show that they're capable of doing all those different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that's part of it, like, they have to demonstrate to us, to Stu, included in NER, that they can do this, because we're not going to contract with an entity that can't deliver.
I'm going to try to make a motion that we're recommending that staff proceed with the RFP as currently presented to us.
Actually, I've got a couple of quick questions.
Okay. I was going to say, I want to make sure we get all the conditions in. Go ahead with your questions.
Ben, quick question. Under the community stewards point, under training, it says anti-racist, equity, mental health, first aid, de-escalation. Is there going to be physical first aid? Because it just says mental first aid. And I think it would be useful to add.
There wasn't a comma. It said mental health, first aid.
Maybe it's.
So, first, mental health first aid is actually a program. There is actually a thing that you have to receive formal training for. So it's not, and I really wish I could tell you exactly what that means. And I did look at it at one point, but that is an actual thing. I guess, I don't know about physical first aid. That's a good question. I mean, do we want stewards touching people and?
I mean, they might need to be like CPR certified, but
Yeah.
I would say that otherwise, that's when they call in the community.
That's a first responder.
I'm not opposed. I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
I think this.
I'm just asking the question. I'm
Yeah.
not making the suggestion.
Right.
Just because I saw the term first aid, and I'm wondering, if I'm walking down the street, if I ever needed a steward,
Right.
it's when I'm keeled over having a heart
Right.
attack, and maybe something like CPR
Okay.
would be good.
Yeah.
You know.
I think just getting clarity on that before the RFP goes out, and to say
Yeah.
just point about with the accountability, I think I'm happy to support a motion or whatever, but my condition is that we define the touch points for the community, not this commission, but the everyday people who don't have you at their
Yeah.
beck and call on these
Yeah.
meetings, that they know how they can inform the city council and the public decisions around this, and also that we have a list of a concrete list of the certain trainings you all are going to want from the RFP process.
All right, so let
What's
me-
written in the slide now is what we're planning to move forward with. So again, I do think now is a nice moment if you think we should add some other specific things.
All right, so let me try to make sure I'm understanding my conditions correctly. So I've got NOR's coordination of, that the applicant will demonstrate coordination with existing city services, coordination and synergy or something along those lines. Okay.
Which also is to say, there could be folks, that have a lot of other trainings, but in terms of minimum what we're asking for.
So coordination with existing city services, you said, I'm trying to figure out how to put that as a condition, that the applicant would provide a plan for community engagement, which includes dispute resolution and
The applicant would agree to the whatever touch points of accountability the city has.
points of accountability.
Right, it sounds like the accountability is in the steering committee bylaws at city council and during their quarterly reports. So we would want the applicant to agree, to those standards, whatever the accountability is, that you need to agree to it. I don't know if it's more for the RFP or just for the city. I like the city to.
You could
Right, I
really,
want
you
the
could
city
make the
to define.
recommendation and request that council evaluate these
Right.
things that came up at Downtown Commission
Right.
without suggesting what the policy or procedure should be. The other thing, and I had noticed that Andrew Fletcher was here, and I don't want to derail us into a side conversation, but he had shared with me in a private meeting that he's hoping that the Buskers Coalition can kind of be rebranded and re-permitted and have merchandise and stuff in relationship with the bid. And that was something that this group always cared about. So if you wanted to say also that they're talking with each council member, so it wouldn't just be out of nowhere. But if you were interested in the Buskers maybe resurfacing through this.
I had a similar conversation with Andrew,
Yeah.
and because of my conversation with him, I really want to attach safety and activation of spaces. I think they are really related, and I noticed that activation and programming was pretty low on the list of priorities, and safety was really high. But I think activating dead spaces with music, food trucks, and other programming is a way
We
to
talk about that all the
provide
time.
safety without providing security guards.
I bet we'll
Totally
see more
agree.
of that in the subsequent years too. Because there will be new survey information each year.
Okay. I'm going to try to make a motion. You guys pitch in. All right. So I would move that the Downtown Commission support staff's current proposed request for proposals for the bid under the with these additional comments. I don't know if they're even conditions that the RFP include information regarding the applicant's coordination of their services with existing city services and any synergies that they can provide thereof, that they evaluate their accountability program and coordinate with the various boards and commissions and city staff to make sure that that as a service provider, they remain accountable to the community, and that the I don't know if this is to the service provider, the buskers. Is that part of the RFP, Stu?
Making sure that buskers and food trucks and other small, like individual gig workers are considered in the programming.
There you go. Yeah, that was great.
Perfect.
Second.
So moved. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thanks for hanging around so long.
Thank you. I appreciate this
Yeah.
body for all you've done. It's been, like I say, kind of a long 2 years together, but
And really like 10 or
It's been
15
short
years
for
for
me.
a bid.
let's like we'll keep doing it quarterly for the foreseeable future. So thank you.
Are you guys
thank you,
excited?
Jen.
I'm excited about the bid. I'm excited. It's been a long time coming.
I like where we're in tonight. I'll put it that way. Guys, I really, really appreciate if you've got to leave, please, don't, we're not voting on anything. We're going to try to get through our updates and reports though, if that's all right. But if you got to leave, please do. Thank you very much for sticking with us to the vote. Public Space Enhancements Committee, if you're not leaving. No?
We're running a little bit behind on that. I think we've engaged some of our other members. Billy's going to help us get invitations out. Don't you worry, the work is being done.
I think I need some help from you and Dana on securing email addresses for people. A couple of names came up in terms of suggesting to invite, and I don't have their email addresses. I couldn't find them online, so just we can chat after maybe. But yeah.
Very good. Thank you. DRC, Ricardo.
We had an informal pre-meeting discussion on the 144 and 179 Riverside Drive application for amendment to conditional zoning. Everybody's familiar with that project. That project went to City Council, and City Council got them to agree to come back on September 10th, which is not a lot of time, so I'm guessing that means that they're going to try to at least incorporate the affordable housing incentive, which is the least that we can ask for. We had a discussion of DRC review scope, which we talked about. We saw a presentation earlier about the levels, the thresholds for review. We had the formal review of the Duke substation on Rankin Avenue. We had some minor comments, and the project was approved. Was also approved by City Council. We had the Grove Arcade Hotel, which we saw today. That was also very, very straightforward, not really much to talk about. And then there was sort of informal discussion about the land acknowledgement that PNC has added to their meetings at the beginning of each meeting, and DRC kind of, it's sort of an open-ended topic right now, but we kind of agreed that we didn't want to get into that.
Wonderful, thank you. ADA?
Yeah, we're super excited on the public enhancement realm that we're launching winter in downtown this year, and we have received the funding to actually put winter lights in Pritchard Park and in North Pack Square, or Pack Square Plaza, sorry.
That's so great.
Super exciting. We're also bringing back the Winter Windows competition, which was a huge kind of economic boost during the winter season. We've partnered with some local organizations like Go Local to bring a locals hot chocolate walk. We're encouraging businesses to stay open later during the season, and we're just really excited for all of the activation we're going to be bringing to public spaces during the winter time. I feel like I had something else, but
That's pretty great stuff, though.
It is, isn't it? Super exciting.
That's great. General downtown updates, no written report.
Sorry about that. I went through it and I really didn't have a whole lot new to report. I did just have one update I'll share with you all, and that is that the restroom facility, the Portland Loo, the current delivery date is September 16th. So it shouldn't take too long to get it in place. And we're talking about a ribbon cutting, which I know Hayden has been talking with some staff about as well to help with that. That ribbon cutting would probably be early October, but as soon as we get it in place, it will be open for use, so not too much longer for that.
City council updates? There's not much going on.
No, never. I mean, you pretty much heard me talk about the big things. We're talking about the housing. We're talking about everything you did is like present in our working right now. If you have any questions, go ahead, but we've had a long day.
All right, we are scheduled to hear from Chief Lamb, getting our public safety update next meeting on the 27th. And probably, I wanted to let us marinate in this housing thing a little bit more. And we might, so it sounds like we've got a request. I don't know that we can arrange it in time to get an update from Buncombe County at that meeting.
I can ask.
We can ask, that's all we can do. Any other comments?
While I've been I've been reading this is the Ramada proposal enlarged, which I think is going to be coming up for review or approval on September 10th. So, and that is of course related to housing and folks that are using the services in downtown. Not sure how it's going to land, but FYI, that's coming next.
Thank you very much, everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please leave. Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing that. Thanks for chiming in to be on that review board. I'm sure we'll get to talk about it.